Chapter 35-48. As soon as their voices fell, everyone turned to look in that direction. As expected, 30 degrees to the northeast, the energy of heaven and earth was the most violent. The wind howled and the waves surged. Although they couldn't see where the island was, it was good to know the direction. All inheritors, please get ready, the 5 elements and 5 malevolent energies will arrive at any time. Although Chancellor Nan Tian hated Lin Yi, he couldn't let him die. If he died, then no one would be able to go to the island, and he wouldn't be able to bring his new follower, the Xianchen ancestor. In the distance, the other challengers furrowed their brows as they watched the scene unfold before them anxiously. The power of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was far too great, far beyond their imaginations. At this moment, it was as if the whole world was shaking because of the appearance of the island. This situation lasted for about half an hour, and the violent heaven and earth spiritual chi seemed to become more and more violent. 30 degrees to the northeast, a white misty area gradually appeared. No one knew what it was, but everyone was very excited. Perhaps this was the legendary Heavenly Island. The island has appeared. All participants, get ready to land on the island. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. The participants were excited, but they didn't dare to breathe too loudly, nor did they dare to cheer. All of them looked at the scene in front of them nervously, waiting for Chancellor Nan Tian's next order. The ground under their feet began to shake along with the violent energy of heaven and earth, and the waves became more and more turbulent, reaching tens of meters in height. That misty white area tugged at everyone's hearts. Suddenly, that white area on the surface of the sea suddenly shot out colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, they would be able to see colorful rays of light. If one looked closely, it was actually 7 colors, and there was a black glow. This should be the light of the 5 elements and 7 elements, and the black was the 5 malevolent energies. Everyone was very nervous at this moment. They stared at the white area without blinking. Was this the legendary Heavenly Island? The pressure is about to be activated. Inheritors and Zhang Naipeo, please protect the person who activated it. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. As soon as he finished speaking, an intense and dazzling light shot out from Heaven Stage Island. Everyone's eyes were temporarily blinded. They were all at the great perfection of the heaven rank. Normally, even if they were stimulated by intense light, their vision wouldn't be affected. But this time, their eyes couldn't see anything, and even their perception was blinded. These inheritors were good too. Never had they imagined that in this world, there would be such a dazzling light that they could not see anything at all. However, compared to the others, Lin Yi could sense the situation outside from the space of the jade pendant. However, no one knew when the white area had started to gradually approach the sea. Or rather, they had been very close before. It was just that because of the light and shadow, everyone felt that it was very far away. As the intense light burst forth, the boundless might of the 5 elements and 7 attributes, as well as the might of the 5 evils chi, was suddenly released and swept towards the coast. Hurry up and circulate the mantra to defend. Chancellor Nan Tian yelled. The pressure had already been fully concentrated on him. The inheritors and Zhang Naipeo didn't dare delay, hurriedly activating their mantras to defend against this torrential pressure. At this moment, there was a suffocating feeling. Zhang Naipeo was absorbing the 5 evils chi, and he was probably the one who was having the easiest time here. Although he kept on absorbing, he was having an easier time than the other inheritors. The power of the pressure was unbearable, making it hard for them to breathe. However, the inheritors all knew their own mission. If the one in the middle was Tag and Long, they might not be working so hard, but the one in the middle was Lin Yi, the man they loved deeply, the man they would give up their lives for, and so all the inheritors gritted their teeth and held on. Beads of sweat rolled down from the foreheads of the inheritors. Lin Yi saw it all, and his heart ached, but there was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do here. He had a mission to fulfill. As the pressure was released, the Sky Tier Island, which had been faintly discernible, gradually became clearer. Through the multicolored light, a huge white island appeared before everyone's eyes. It was as if the island was so far away, yet so close at the same time. However, this island seemed to have appeared out of thin air, because when they arrived, there was nothing on the calm surface of the sea. Fourth dimensional space. Jiao Lao's voice rang in Lin Yi's ears. Sky Great Island is hidden in a fourth dimensional space. Fourth dimensional space. Lin Yi paused. That's right, it's similar to the Jade space. Sky Great Island is a fourth dimensional space hidden in the endless West Sea. No wonder with our current technology, we can't find this island the size of a small country. Jiao Lao said. I see. Lin Yi understood. The Jade space couldn't be found by normal people, right? But, in this case, not everyone could enter and exit Sky Great Island. No wonder they had to use an array to open the seal. Pioneer, pay attention, your mission is coming. Just as Lin Yi and Jiao Lao were sighing, Chancellor Nan Tian's voice rang out, get ready. When the light beam channel opens, step onto the light beam channel and open Sky Great Island. Light beam channel. Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but in the next moment, he saw a light beam shoot into the middle of the 8 trigrams array, where Lin Yi was standing. Quickly enter the light beam and open the seal. Chancellor Nan Tian shouted. Lin Yi was slightly stunned. He was surprised to find that the light beam was actually a physical object, which meant that he could walk on the light beam. Thinking of this, Lin Yi didn't dare to delay. He quickly stepped onto the light beam and walked forward. However, the pressure around him made it difficult for Lin Yi to balance. However, he didn't dare to divert his attention to resist the pressure, because the light beam was in the shape of a cylinder, and the surface was extremely smooth. If Lin Yi was distracted, he would fall. Inheritor, hurry up and circulate the mantra. Otherwise, Lin Yi will be in great danger. The pressure above will concentrate on him and turn him into pieces. Patriarch Xianchen roared. He said this to threaten the inheritor to do their best. Chapter 35-49. Lin Yi followed the light pillar and carefully climbed to the top. At the top, Lin Yi saw something that looked like a rotating 5-pointed star. It was this thing that was constantly emitting 5-colored light. Initiator, place your hands on it and chant the mantra. Chancellor Nan Tian said loudly. Lin Yi followed the instructions and placed his hands on the rotating 5-pointed star. Only then did he realize that the 5-pointed star wasn't in a physical state, but an illusion. However, regardless of what it was, Lin Yi quickly began to chant the mantra. When Lin Yi began to chant the mantra, there seemed to be some kind of force pushing Heaven Level Island. Heaven Level Island, which was originally half submerged in the sea, suddenly rose from the sea and became bigger and bigger. Finally, at the edge of the coastline, a passageway array formation suddenly appeared. It was just like the array formation that led everyone to the Five Fiends Wilderness and the Five Fiends Mountain Range. At this moment, Lin Yi finally understood that this passageway was opened by the power of the 5 elements. Something seemed to be hinting to him that if he stopped chanting the mantra, this passageway would disappear. At this moment, Lin Yi wanted to jump down and quickly rush into the passageway with the inheritors. However, Lin Yi helplessly realized that his hands seemed to be glued to something. He couldn't pull them back at all. This feeling was the same as when he was at the stone door of the cave. It made him unable to extricate himself. Just as he thought of retreating, a voice seemed to be hinting to him that this was his mission. The initiator had to persist until the last moment. Only at the last moment could they enter the passageway of Heaven Level Island. They were burning themselves to help the other cultivators who wanted to enter the island. This was their mission. It turned out that being an initiator wasn't a good job. That silly tag-along was still very proud of himself. However, Lin Yi didn't regret it. After all, he had to do this for the sake of the inheritors. Lin Yi could feel the exhaustion of the inheritors. If they didn't give it their all, they wouldn't be able to survive. That coercion would fall on Lin Yi's body, and it was hard to say whether Lin Yi could be killed by the coercion, but the opening of the heavenly island would definitely stop. The passageway has appeared. The trial takers are beginning to ascend the island. Xianchen, follow me first. With that, Chancellor Nan Tian took the lead and charged into the passageway, and Patriarch Xianchen followed closely behind. Immediately after, Kong Mingming and the other trial takers also entered the tunnel one by one according to the order they had lined up. They could also see that the inheritor was trembling and probably wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. We need to get to the island as soon as possible. Tian Chand, Songling Rue, Rock Candy, Sydney, Wang Xinyan, Han Jingjing, Xiao Ran, Zhongping Liang, and the others were very worried about Lin Yi and the inheritors, but they had to enter the passageway according to the order. They could only pray that Lin Yi and the others could enter the passageway successfully in the end. However, when everyone entered the passageway, Guan Xan suddenly couldn't hold on anymore. Her body swayed and she directly fell to the ground. Guan Xan was one of the inheritors. The woman with the weakest foundation. Following closely behind was Little Nine, and behind her, Meng Yao, Yushu, Yu Ning, Tang Yun, and Xiao Xiao also fell to the ground one by one. It seemed that they couldn't hold on anymore and also fainted on the spot. Once they fainted, the coercion on Lin Yi's side suddenly increased, and the huge majestic force directly pressed him down from the light pillar. Lin Yi fell into the sea. This shocked Lin Yi, but he was worried about the inheritors. He wanted to see how Meng Yao and the others were doing, but what shocked Lin Yi was that after he left the light pillar, the passageway of the island actually became more and more illusory. And the entire island began to sink again. The entire heavenly stage island began to sink again. Lin Yi panicked. At this moment, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He knew that after he left, the passageway of the island would disappear. If he quickened his pace, he could go in. But what about Meng Yao and the others? Even if Lin Yi ran over and saved one of them, he couldn't save a second one. After all, the 8 trigrams formation was very big, and each inheritor was very far away from each other. It would be very difficult for Lin Yi to save one and come back. Take care of them for me, wait for me to come back. Lin Yi yelled to his lackeys and quickly flew into the passageway. He had to go to Sky Class Island. Meng Yao and the others didn't seem to be much of a problem. Lin Yi could at least sense their life force, and so he asked his lackeys to bring them back. Ling Shan, Sun Jingyi, Shirhan, Qing Yi, Ziyu, and the others all rushed over, and this was the last scene Lin Yi saw. Naipeo hesitated for a bit before following, but the path was already starting to flicker. Whether or not he'd be able to reach Sky Class Island was up to luck now. Yao Yao, Shu, Tang Yun, Xiao Xiao, Yu Ning, Guan Xan, Zhou. Wait for me to come back. Lin Yi sighed. He thought that they would be his biggest helpers on Sky Class Island, but they fainted all of a sudden. The last scene Lin Yi saw was them fainting around the 8 trigrams formation, and with a flash of white light, the passageway disappeared, and so did Naipeo. Lin Yi and the others all disappeared under the white light. The only thing that made Lin Yi feel at ease was that his lackeys and the women he left behind were all top-level practitioners, Sky Class Late Phase Peak. They were the strongest in the common world. With them, Lin Yi didn't need to worry about Yao Yao and the others. After entering the passageway, Lin Yi suddenly felt like he'd entered an illusory space, and then his eyes lit up. In front of him was a white light, and Lin Yi was temporarily blinded. Lin Yi subconsciously closed his eyes and entered the jade space, activating his spiritual sense to sense his surroundings, but what disappointed Lin Yi was that there was only white light around him, and there was nothing else. It was like a strange space, and Lin Yi couldn't even see his companions or enemies. His feet, on the other hand, seemed to be floating in midair, unable to step on anything. It was like he was in a weightless state. Since he was already here, Lin Yi knew that there was nothing he could do right now. He could only wait quietly. Chapter 3550. Lin Yi opened his eyes and saw a bare high platform, and standing on the high platform, there was not only Lin Yi, but also Kong Ming, Zhongping Liang, Dongfang Bidao, Unfathomable Fist, and Xiao Ran. In addition, there were no other participants, only 6 people. Of course, apart from Unfathomable Fist and Xiao Ran, who were not particularly familiar with Lin Yi, among them, only Kong Ming and Dongfang Bidao had a big grudge against Lin Yi. Zhongping Liang, Lin Yi's current underling, was considered an ally, but where were the others? Tian Chan, Song Lingrui, Zhang Naipeo, Xianchen Ancestor. Where's the snow pair with rock sugar? Wang Xinyan and Han Jingjing. They all disappeared together in the teleportation channel in front of the Heavenly Island. How did they all disappear? However, the high platform where Lin Yi was now was surrounded by cliffs, and there were no obstacles on it. It was clear at a glance how many people were here, and there was no room to hide. What kind of fucking place is this? This is Heavenly Island. Why is there nothing? Kong Ming came back to his senses and couldn't help but curse, damn, are we being cheated? Boss Lin Yi, what do you think? Zhongping Liang was also a little puzzled. Was this Heavenly Island? But there was nothing on this island. How could it be called Heavenly Island? Also, where did Zhang Naipeo go? The chi of heaven and earth here is very abundant, but we are alone here. I don't see any sects or people. This is very strange. Lin Yi had never been to Heavenly Island, so this place made Lin Yi a little puzzled. Before, everyone imagined how beautiful Heavenly Island was, and there were many masters on it, helping everyone to break through the heavenly Tao. But now, not to mention masters, there was only a cliff. There was nothing, so how could they deal with it? He looked into the distance again. The platform was surrounded by white mist. It was impossible to see anything in the distance. The only thing that could be clearly seen was that below the platform was a cliff that was tens of thousands of feet high. Moreover, it was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom of it. Further down, the fog was too thick to see. Dongfang Bidao was one of the most active people. When he came here, he found that it was different from what he imagined, and other people didn't know where to go, and suddenly 3/4 of the people were missing. Who would be happy in such a situation? Could it be that when those people came over, they didn't stand firmly on the high platform and fell directly into the cliff? Thinking of this, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. But after calming down, Lin Yi wasn't as naive as he thought. Lin Yi felt that since this Heaven Stage Island's teleportation array could send all these people over, then it should be able to send them over. Of course, he couldn't let some of them die, right? Then these people might have been teleported over, but they might have been teleported to other similar places. This reminded Lin Yi of the trial of Heavenly Elixir sect. Everyone was teleported to the 5 Evils Savage Land, and the environment here was a bit like the 5 Evils Savage Land. Although there was no 5 Evils chi here, this was a kind of intuition. Limitless Fist Master, what do you think? Dongfang Bidao couldn't help but ask. This limitless Fist Master was the great elder of the Holy Fist Palace. Because of Li Siba, the Holy Fist Palace did not oppose Lin Yi before, but it could not be said that their relationship was very good. I can't see it for the time being. The limitless Fist Master shook his head. But, since the Heavenly Stage Island is so powerful, I don't think it will harm us. I don't think he will harm us. Let's just wait. Look at young hero Lin. He isn't anxious at all. Humph, we are all on the island, and everyone is equal. Young hero Lin is just a junior. Dongfang Bideo snorted coldly, because before everyone opened the Heaven Stage Island, they also said at the Heaven Stage meeting that everyone's purpose was to successfully reach the Heaven Stage Island, so in the process of opening the Heaven Stage Island, they could not attack each other. Therefore, Dongfang Bideo now did not take the initiative to provoke Lin Yi, and Lin Yi could not kill him, so he was a little unscrupulous. Of course, this agreement might be invalid after everyone went to the island and formed a gang, but at least it was still valid now. Everyone stayed on this high platform for more than half an hour, and they were inevitably a little strange and anxious. What was this idea? Would the Heaven Stage Island be a high platform, and then everyone would die alone on it? There was not even a woman here, and they could not reproduce. Homosexuality could not be passed on to the next generation. Is there anyone? Damn it. Kong Mingming finally waited impatiently and shouted loudly. His voice echoed in the sky, but no one answered him. Boss Lin Yi, it can't be the predecessor of the Heaven Stage Island to test us, right? Zhong Pingliang had the memory of the Mad Dragon Patriarch in his mind, so he still knew about the customs of these ancient people. He thought about it and asked. Test. I can't rule out this possibility. Lin Yi nodded, but, at least there should be some hints. Let's wait and see. Zhong Pingliang nodded, then ran to the side and wandered around, presumably looking for any hints on this high platform. However, after about 10 minutes, suddenly there was a long roar in the sky, which made everyone who was a little anxious suddenly serious, and they looked up at the sky. They saw a flying spirit beast in the distant sky. Although this was only a spirit beast, it also made everyone excited, because at least this meant that there were creatures nearby, and it was not a lonely dead island. At this time, when the flying spirit beast flew closer, everyone became even more excited because there was a person sitting on the back of the flying spirit beast. Although the age and gender of the person couldn't be seen clearly, anyone who could appear here must be a peerless expert. Senior, wait a minute. Kong Mingming shouted. Among them, he was the one who was most anxious to leave. Here. Dongfang Bideo also shouted. He came here to break through the heavenly Tao, not to waste time on this high platform. However, they didn't need to call, the flying spirit beast itself would fly here. They saw the spirit beast flying lower and lower, and the person on the spirit beast could be seen by everyone. This was a man about 30 years old, but it was said to be 30 years old because of his appearance. His actual age was unknown. After all, the masters here were likely to be masters above the heavenly Tao. The heaven stage could already keep their appearance forever, let alone the masters of the heavenly Tao. Chapter 35-51. Who is the old, weak, sick and disabled? Dongfang Bideo's temper was as overbearing as his name. This man said that he was old, weak, sick and disabled. Naturally, he was not happy. Those who could successfully land on the Heaven Stage Island were the best in the cultivation world. He was feeling good about himself. When the man said that, his face suddenly became ugly. I used to be the master of the Dongfang family, an ancient family. I was a master of the great perfection of the peak late stage of Heaven Stage. The man's eyes were fierce. He raised his sleeves, and an invisible strength shot out of his hand. Dongfang Bideo was directly knocked to the ground with a puff. He struggled on the ground for a long time before he got up with a red face, but he dared not make trouble again. What kind of master was the person who could teach him a lesson through the air? Looking at the whole cultivation world, it was the unique existence, even Lin Yi could not. It's really weak. The man snorted, and then said to Lin Yi and others impatiently, I am the welcoming envoy of the North Island of Heaven stage. I will take you to the welcoming pavilion of the North Island to report. You newcomers, who will go with me? Ah! Senior, I'll go. Dongfang Bideo completely put away his previous arrogance at this time. He could not see the strength of the man in front of him. Obviously, he was of a higher level than him, and he was to guide them to the welcoming pavilion, so he could not make trouble. Old man, what are you yelling for? You have offended the welcoming envoy. Let me go. Kong Mingming said immediately at the moment, because it seemed that only 2 or 3 people could sit on the flying spirit beast. He didn't know if 3 people could sit down, so he must fight for a chance for himself. My spirit beast can only sit 3 people. In that case, you 2 come up first. The man said faintly. Ah, we have to go up too. Zhong Pingliang pulled Lin Yi at this time, and then said to Kong Mingming and Dongfang Bideo, are you going to rob us? Chapter 3552. It seemed that the young man had expected to receive Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. However, his attitude was not as arrogant as the previous 2. Instead, he looked quite approachable. Okay, thank you, senior. Xiao Ran glanced at Lin Yi and boarded the flying spirit beast. Lin Yi followed him. The flying spirit beast slowly took off. Xiao Ran could not help but ask, Senior, how should I address you? The freckled man shook his head and said, all right, don't call me senior. I'm just a bitter guy. Call me senior brother bitter guy. Ha! Xiao Ran was stunned. He thought the freckled man was approachable, but he did not expect him to be so easygoing. He even gave himself the nickname Senior Brother Bitter Guy. Both of you are rogue cultivators from the secular world, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked. Sort of. How did you know? This surprised Lin Yi. He knew about Xiao Ran's background. It was okay to say that he was a rogue cultivator. After all, the Xiao family was no longer an ancient aristocratic family. There are 6 people who were teleported to the North Island this time. The first person who came to pick them up was from the soaring pavilion. Those 2 must be ruthless figures from the big sects, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy asked with a smile. Yes, Senior Brother Bitter. How did you know? Xiao Ran was also a little surprised. The second person who came to pick them up was from the mysterious pavilion. Those 2 must be cultivators who look very old, right? Senior Brother Bitter Guy continued to guess. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Senior Brother Bitter, why is that? Senior Brother Ku Bai did not explain further, continuing, I am the Clear Cloud Pavilion's guide envoy. Our Clear Cloud Pavilion has the lowest status among the 3 pavilions. Every time we choose a disciple, we are always the last to choose a disciple. Most of the disciples who join us are rogue cultivators with humble origins. Senior Brother, do you mean those people from before? Does that count as joining the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion? Lin Yi was a bit surprised. He didn't expect the Heaven Step Island to be like this. There was actually a sect here, and it seemed like there were 3 different factions in this sect. This was a bit of a headache. That's right. The Soaring Sky Pavilion was the most popular pavilion on the North Island of the Heaven Steps. Here were some second-generation cultivators and the outstanding descendants of the island's famous families, even if they came from the secular world. They're also the core disciples of big sections. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai said, they're the people on the North Island of Heaven stage, the ones you can't provoke the most. Next was the mysterious pavilion. That mysterious pavilion was filled with old men. Naturally, it couldn't be said that the other pavilions didn't have any old men, but their pavilions had a lot of them. Moreover, they didn't like young people, even those with tender faces who had advanced to the heaven rank early on and retained their youthful appearance. Unless they were their own descendants. This group of people took advantage of their seniority. Some of them were the elders of the North Island, although they were not as powerful as the soaring sky pavilion. But he wasn't weak either. And the weakest is our blue cloud pavilion. Well, the grassroots aren't weak either. Lin Yi said with a bitter smile. There's still a big difference. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai shook his head. Our cultivation foundation wasn't as solid as theirs, so when we were both at the peak of the late stage of the heaven stage, there was a gap. There's a difference. Breaking through to the heavenly Tao is equivalent to my current level. We're called foundation establishment experts here, and there's also a difference in strength. Don't look at the name Blue Cloud Pavilion. When it was first named, it meant that those grassroots could rise rapidly here, but, hee. Also, don't mention the term Heavenly Tao anymore. Heavenly Tao is a big category. If you tell others that you're a Heavenly Tao expert, then others will think that you're arrogant. Oh. I can't say it. Lin Yi was slightly stunned. Didn't the secular world say Heavenly Tao? Could it be that there was a higher level above foundation establishment? As for the matters of the three pavilions, Lin Yi didn't care too much about it for the time being. Well, the so-called Heavenly Tao is a general term for an ethereal level. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai was not stingy with his words and said everything he knew. Before, we cultivators were divided into internal and external paths. Chi refinement and body refinement were all to improve the strength of the body, while Heavenly Tao is a pursuit that goes against the heavens. You can also understand it as cultivation. Before cultivation, now cultivation. In the secular world before Heavenly Tao, your strength was equivalent to the Chi refinement stage among cultivators. After stepping into Heavenly Tao, you're at the foundation establishment stage, and only then can you be considered to have truly touched the path of cultivation. You're Heavenly Tao, but you're not the strongest. Lin Yi didn't expect that there seemed to be many levels above Heavenly Tao. Of course, I'm only at the early phase of foundation establishment. Above me, there's still the peak of the early phase, the middle phase. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai explained. Hearing this, Lin Yi's complacent mood dropped to the bottom. When he was in the secular world, he used the omnipotent arts with the art of dragon mastery and the art of dragon mastery, stealing the heavens, and successfully broke through to Heavenly Tao. It was a brand new level of strength, and Lin Yi thought that he had reached the final stop of a cultivator. As long as he went to Sky Class Island and found the pills St. Zhongliju, he could find a way to wake Xiaoke and Armadillo, and then he could go back. What he didn't expect was that Xiaoke still hadn't woken up, and 7 more inheritors were unconscious. The pressure on Lin Yi's body was like a mountain. But that was okay, he could just ask Zhongliju. What he didn't expect was that his strength was the weakest. It seemed a little different from what Lin Yi had thought when he first came here, looking for Zhongliju in a high-profile manner. Very well, but it looks like our clear cloud pavilion is the most harmonious pavilion. Senior Brother Ku is so amiable, and those 2 envoys who tried to approach earlier are so arrogant. Xiao Ran nodded his head and said. He didn't think that joining Blue Cloud Pavilion was inappropriate. He was a low-profile person, and after coming here, naturally, he had to be more low-profile. He didn't have anyone to rely on, and his strength wasn't that good either, so he had to be careful. Harmonious. Hee hee. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai laughed weirdly. I won't say much, you'll know when you see it. Isn't it? Lin Yi paused. He thought that this blue cloud pavilion was made up of grassroots, and that it should be a harmonious pavilion. I'm harmonious, but that doesn't mean others are. I was sent here because of Senior Marshal Brother Kubai. I'm someone who gets bullied, and that's my personality. Senior Marshal Brother Kubai shook his head. Isn't this welcoming good? Those two from before. Weren't they really strong? Xiao Ran didn't understand. Chapter 35-53. But this was the North Island, and he was from the Middle Island, so Lin Yi didn't have to worry about him looking for trouble for now. This confirmed Lin Yi's suspicions. This island was divided into many areas, and the other participants had probably gone to other islands. Previously, they were here to pick the best ones, and I'm here to pick the rest. Regardless of who's left, I'm going to pick them up. If the eldest senior brother in charge finds out that I'm here to pick you two loose cultivators, I'm going to be scolded again. This is a thankless job, who would want to do it? The bitter Shixiang shook his head. That's all he can do to bully me. If he has the guts, he should go fight with Chongtian and Xuanji pavilions. So we're the weakest here. Lin Yi was a little speechless. Senior brother Ku, we're okay, right? We're not that weak. Man, there's no need for that, I get it, but I'm used to being scolded. It's fine. The bitter Shixiang shook his head. But Lin Yi could tell that this bitter Shixiang was a good person, answering all his questions. At this point, Xiaochen already knew that the heaven-ranked North Island was only a part of the heaven-ranked island. There were other teleportation platforms on the heaven-ranked island, and there were also other people in charge of receiving them. As for where they were sent to, that bitter senior brother did not know. With his ability, he really did not know that much. Ku Shixiang, have you heard of this Zhongli Ju? Lin Yi finally asked the question he wanted to ask the most. Since he knew that Tian Chan and the others went to other places, Lin Yi was relieved. Since they were all on Sky Class Island, he'd see them sooner or later. Zhongli Ju. Elixir God Zhongli Ju. Senior brother Kubai blanked for a second before replying, I know he's a famous person from our heaven-ranked North Island. As for where he is now, I'm not sure. I'm just a grassroots disciple selected from a nearby village, and it hasn't been long since I joined the Clear Cloud Pavilion. I don't know. To put it bluntly, we're all newbies, but I'm a bit luckier, and I've already broken through to Sky Dao, and I'm a foundation building practitioner now. Thank you, Senior Brother Ku. Lin Yi nodded. He didn't have a definite answer, but Lin Yi knew that Zhongli Ju should be here. Back in the tomb, Lin Yi already suspected that Zhongli Ju wasn't dead, and that something was missing from the tomb. Lin Yi was even more certain that Zhongli Ju had gone back to get his stuff. Since Zhongli Ju had broken through Sky's Dao, he should be on Sky Class Island. While Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang were inquiring about the situation with this bitter senior brother, Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang, who had set off earlier, were already having a good time with their guide. Unlike the bitter senior brother, their guide had a powerful background. His name was Su Lingchong. He was the grandson of the third elder of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the second generation of cultivation. In every pavilion, the person with the most authority was the pavilion master. It was the few elders. However, the pavilion master rarely asked about such small matters. It was already good enough for an elder to show up for the welcoming ceremony. Damn, 30 years old and he's already a foundation builder. Those so-called cultivation geniuses are just a pile of shit compared to senior brother Su. Kong Mingming said flatteringly after finding out about the background of the guy. He knew very well that if he wanted to establish himself on Sky Class Island, relying on his own strength was definitely not enough. The most important thing was to get on someone's good side, and this Su Lingchong in front of him was obviously a very thick thigh. As long as he could get on his good side, not only would he be able to establish himself on Sky Class Island, he would even be able to find Lin Yi for revenge in the future. Back then, he relied on kissing Little Peach's ass to get in touch with the Xianqian Elder. If he were to get in touch with the Pavilion Master, this Su Lingchong would also become Kong Mingming's stepping stone. In Kong Mingming's eyes, he would become a pile of shit just like Little Peach. Su Lingchong was overjoyed, thinking that this kid was not bad. However, on the surface, he still pretended to smile indifferently. Kong Mingming's flattery had hit the bottom of his heart. Looking at the whole Sky Class North Island, there were not many who could set foot in the Heavenly Law Foundation establishment before the age of 30. There were only a few in each batch of disciples. Although Su Lingchong's strength was largely built up by all kinds of precious resources, the strength of the early stage of foundation establishment was enough to crush many geniuses of the same generation. Kong Mingming's ability to read people's expressions was very strong. Looking at Su Lingchong's expression, he knew that his flattery was right this time. He immediately struck while the iron was hot and said, "Before coming to Heaven Class Island, I thought that a guy like Lin Yi who reached the peak of the late stage of Heaven Class at the age of 19 was already a super genius that could not be found in 10,000 years. But now that I see Senior Brother Su, I know that this idea is too ridiculous. Looking at cultivation from the perspective of the secular world is simply looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. If one wanted to please someone, not only must he know how to flatter, but he must also set up a common enemy for each other. Only in this way could he close the relationship as soon as possible. This was the experience that Kong Mingming had concluded. Just like him and the Xianqian Elder, it was like this. From the performance of this Senior Brother Su just now, he should look down on those so-called cultivation geniuses. As long as they were geniuses, they were usually arrogant and had a sense of superiority. This kind of person could not tolerate experts of the same kind. Sure enough, Su Lingchong quickly took the bait. A 19-year-old at the peak of Heaven Class. Could that Lin Yi be a core disciple of some big sect in the secular world? No, he's just an ordinary grassroots loose cultivator, but he's so awesome that he's unparalleled in the world. He's super good at acting cool. Kong Mingming quickly said. Grassroots loose cultivator? Acting cool. Su Lingchong showed disdain and said, then maybe he picked up some unorthodox cultivation method. Although his level increased very quickly, his foundation is not stable, and his strength is definitely not much. Even if this kind of person is at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Class, to succeed in building his foundation, it's as difficult as ascending to heaven. That's normal, you know the frog at the bottom of the well, right? There's no one around him to compare with, if. Senior Brother Su's eyes are really sharp. If he knew about Senior Brother Su, he would have long been shocked to the point of schizophrenia. However, that Lin Yi relied on some small tricks to run amok in the secular world. Everyone dared to be angry but did not dare to say anything. Senior Brother Su, you have to uphold justice for us. Kong Mingming pretended to be pitiful. There's such a thing. Isn't he just a grassroots loose cultivator? How dare he bully you? Is the sect behind you weak to this extent? Su Lingchong frowned. Chapter 35-54. Pin Liang, on the other hand, curled his lips. What face? It was obvious that he was afraid of Boss Lin Yi's beating. Kong Mingming was really good at making up stories. But he could tell that Kong Mingming had already fooled this Su Shixiang. If he spoke up for Lin Yi, he might offend this Su Shixiang. It was best to wait and see what other tricks Kong Mingming had up his sleeve. Besides, Lin Yi had sent him here to be a spy. He couldn't act rashly. He just needed to report to Lin Yi in time. So, he pretended to be nonchalant and asked, Su Shixiang, if the two of us go with you, will there be no one to care about the others? Not really. According to tradition, after the soaring pavilion selects people, the remaining people will be picked up by the other two pavilions. Su Lingchong said as he looked at Kong Mingming, the mysterious pavilion will only pick some old men. Since that Lin Yi you mentioned is so young, he must have been picked up by the weakest Blue Cloud Pavilion. Hee, that's the famous trash shelter. Grassroots solo practitioners didn't have a strong foundation, and since the newcomers were the leftovers from the other two pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers were the weakest in terms of strength and potential. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was a trash shelter. Trash shelter. Doesn't that mean we can bully them in the future? Kong Mingming's eyes lit up. You don't have to wait. You can bully those trash later. I want to see how arrogant that Lin Yi can be. Su Lingchong smiled meaningfully. That's quite arrogant. Kong Mingming pretended to be excited. When Su Shixiang came to pick us up, the kid next to brother Zhong Pingliang didn't even spare a glance at Su Shixiang. He didn't even want to come up. Luckily, brother Zhong Pingliang changed his ways. Otherwise, he would have gone to the trash shelter too. Oh. That kid. He doesn't look like much. Those who were powerful were the ones who acted cool. Those without strength are called idiots. In a while, I'll show you what an idiot is. Su Lingchong nodded faintly and looked at Zhong Pingliang. But how did you change your mind? You used to follow that Lin Yi or something. It's a long story. He stole my woman and my underling. I have nothing left, and one of my kidneys was cut off by him. If I want to survive, I can only pretend to be courteous to him. But it's all good now, I have a big backer like senior brother Su. I don't need to be afraid. Zhong Pingliang said pitifully, Fuck, why are you so unlucky? Fortunately, you're with me. Otherwise, you'd be bullied to death. Su Lingchong was a little disdainful of Pinliang, but he was his man now, and the kid had a way with words, so he accepted him. As they spoke, the aerial spirit beast had already landed in an open space. In front of him was a magnificent pavilion. In the middle of the main door were 3 huge golden words on a black background, Welcoming New Pavilion. At this moment, there were already people waiting in front of the door. As soon as the flying spirit beast landed, a circle of people immediately surrounded them. The person in the lead had white hair and a youthful complexion. He had an imposing appearance, and when he faced others, he always had the demeanor of a master. He only bowed to Su Lingchong. This is the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion, Hu Yunfeng. Although the two of you were chosen by Soaring Pavilion, before you succeed in your foundation building, you still have to stay in Welcoming New Pavilion to train. He will take care of you in the future. Su Lingchong nodded his head at Hu Yunfeng as he introduced the place to Hu Yunfeng. Master Su, don't worry. As long as I'm here, Welcoming New Pavilion won't lose out to you too. Hu Yunfeng stroked his white beard and guaranteed with a smile. Although Hu Yunfeng was the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion in name, and it sounded very powerful, he was actually just a small team leader in the training camp. He was on a completely different level compared to Soaring Pavilion. Not to mention the pavilion master, even an elder from Soaring Pavilion was a big figure that he had to try his best to climb up to and look up to. The reason why he was able to sit as the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion was because he had the support of Soaring Pavilion's elder. Naturally, he had to curry favor with Su Lingchong, the precious grandson of the third elder. The position of the pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion still had some benefits, and he was still hoping to continue doing it. Even if he managed to reach the peak of Welcoming New Pavilion in the future, when he was promoted to be a manager of one of the 3 great pavilions, he still needed to have a strong network. Oh, it's the pavilion master. No wonder you have such an elegant demeanor. My name is Kong Ming Ming. I'm new here, and I hope that the pavilion master will take care of me in the future. Kong Ming Ming flattered with the spirit of sucking up to everyone. Although he had already established a friendship with Su Ling Chong, the second generation of cultivation, Su Ling Chong was still an inner disciple of the Soaring Sky Pavilion after all. He would not stay in the Welcoming Pavilion for long. The pavilion master of the Welcoming Pavilion in front of him was a good target for him to take advantage of in the future. Realistically speaking, how he would fare in the Welcome Pavilion from now on would depend entirely on whether the pavilion master would support him or not. If Kong Ming Ming thought of this, Zhong Pingliang naturally thought of it as well. He didn't dare to be negligent and quickly added, "My name is Zhong Pingliang. I don't dare to say anything else, but I can definitely be an assistant. In the future, if the pavilion master needs anything, just tell me, and I'll be there." Of course, of course. Both of you are talented, and you have a big backer like young Master Su. You will definitely have a bright future in the future. Seeing that the two of them were so agreeable, Hu Yunfeng was naturally happy to help them. Not only could he please Su Ling Chong, but he could also get 2 more followers. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. One had to know that in this welcoming new pavilion, it didn't mean that his words carried weight just because he was the pavilion master. There were still 2 vice pavilion masters behind him, eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. If he wanted to suppress his opponents and stabilize his position as the pavilion master, one of the keys was to curry favor with a strong backer like the Elder of Soaring Pavilion. The other key was how many followers he could get. The more followers he had, the more power he would have. Only then could he truly be the master of the house. Moreover, what made Hu Yunfeng the happiest was that even though he wasn't weak now, his hair was still white before he broke through to Sky Class late phase peak. That was why he had a grandfather face. This was actually quite a shameful thing on Sky Class Island. Even though he looked like a baby, he might even be older than him. He really wasn't that old, but he grew up too quickly. However, Kong Ming Ming said that he had a sage-like demeanor, which made him feel elated all of a sudden. After a while, the other 2 flying spirit beasts that lagged behind also arrived one after another. Dongfang Bideo's group also had someone go up to greet them, but it was not Hu Yunfeng, the pavilion master, but the vice pavilion master of Welcoming New Pavilion. Chapter 3555. According to the customs of the mysterious pavilion, Feng Song didn't look young, but he had a dignified air about him. Among the 2 deputy pavilion masters, Feng Song was the one who posed the greatest threat to Hu Yunfeng's position as pavilion master. Although his background wasn't as strong as Hu Yunfeng's, the newcomers selected by the mysterious pavilion were basically under his banner. In terms of strength and rallying power, he wasn't weak. He was currently Hu Yunfeng's biggest competitor. As for the remaining deputy pavilion master, although his rank was the same as Feng Song's, his position in the Welcoming Pavilion had been completely marginalized due to the fact that the Blue Cloud Pavilion's backing wasn't impressive and he didn't have any outstanding strength. Let alone competing for the position of pavilion master, it seemed like he might not even be able to keep his position as deputy pavilion master. Even the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion would at most call him 3rd pavilion master when they met, which showed how awkward his position was. If it weren't for the fact that the 3 pavilion summit had no choice but to arrange a 3rd pavilion master for the balance of power, the Welcoming Pavilion would have been Hu Yunfeng and Feng Song's world. Compared to the previous 2 groups of pavilion masters and deputy pavilion masters who personally came out to welcome them, senior brother Ku Bai and Lin Yi, who arrived last, were completely ignored. Not only did they not see any important figures, but even a random disciple of the Welcoming Pavilion couldn't be bothered with them. Blue Cloud Pavilion was famous for being a waste shelter. They were destined to have no future in this life, so what was there to greet? But what puzzled Lin Yi the most was that even if the pavilion master didn't come, why didn't anyone else from the Blue Cloud Pavilion come to welcome them? Even if there wasn't a big lineup, shouldn't their own people at least come? This made Lin Yi feel that senior brother Kubai's words weren't nonsense. This was the worst pavilion, and they weren't a monolithic block. Lin Yi wasn't the only one who was depressed. Even Xiao Ran, who wanted to keep a low profile, was depressed when he saw this scene. After all, those who could come to this heavenly island were all figures who stood at the peak of the secular world. They were dragons and phoenixes among men, favored by the heavens. When had they ever been given the cold shoulder like this? If everyone received the same treatment, then there would be nothing to feel unbalanced about. The problem was that the other side had important people come out to greet them, but they didn't even have a small fry on their side. The difference was too great. This difference in treatment meant that they had already lost at the starting line from the very beginning. It was easy to imagine how their days in the welcoming pavilion would turn out. Senior brother Kubai had already expected this scene. Seeing the uncertain expressions on the two's faces, he could only awkwardly comfort them. Although our Blue Cloud Pavilion can't be compared to the other two pavilions, it's not as good as the other two pavilions. Actually, there's also a deputy pavilion master. He wanted to bring some people to welcome you, but he was called away by the pavilion master to deal with some other matters, so... Lin Yi and Xiao Ran looked at each other with a bitter smile. Looking at the grand gestures of the other two pavilions, they knew that the welcoming pavilion still valued the newcomers very much. As for their Blue Cloud Pavilion's deputy pavilion master, he was temporarily assigned to do some chores. He couldn't even come out to greet the newcomers. It could be seen how weak his position was. No wonder even the Clear Cloud Pavilion's internal department wasn't as united as a piece of iron board. If it was any other newcomer who had been given such a cold shoulder, they would definitely have died. If any newcomer had been given such cold treatment, it would be strange if they still listened to their deputy pavilion master. This was a typical example of a bear in a nest. Let's go. There will be a welcoming ceremony in the main hall later. Apart from the few of you who teleported here from the secular world, there will be a welcoming ceremony. Apart from the few of you who were sent here from the secular world, the newcomers who were selected from the main island are already there. I'll take you there. Senior brother Kubai sighed. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran nodded. Since things had already come to this point, it was useless to complain in their hearts. After all, they couldn't just switch to Rushing Sky Pavilion or Mysterious Pavilion at the last minute. Not to mention that the two of them weren't that shameless, even if they did, they wouldn't accept them. Otherwise, they would have been selected long ago. Since they were already here, they could only take things one step at a time. After entering the main entrance of the welcoming pavilion, they passed through a courtyard and arrived at the main hall. Just as senior brother Kubai said, there were already a lot of newcomers gathered here. At first glance, there were about 40 to 50 people. They were all selected from the various towns and villages on the island. Every one of them was above the late stage of Heaven stage. Even those at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage could be seen everywhere. The newcomers present had spontaneously divided into 3 small groups. There was a group of about 10 people in the center, each of them dressed in luxurious clothes and had an air of superiority about them. Apart from their own circle, they looked at everyone else with disdain. In the entire main hall, their voices were the loudest, and they had the air of natural superiors. This feeling of déjà vu reminded Lin Yi of the disdainful attitude of the people in the secular world towards the people in the countryside. The two were exactly the same. These newcomers are all chosen by Rushing Sky Pavilion. Each of them has a great background. They are the real second generation of cultivators. You must not provoke these people in the future. You can't afford to. Senior brother Ku Bai whispered to Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. He was afraid that the two of them didn't know the details and accidentally brought disaster to themselves. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran finally understood. No wonder this group of people kept talking about their family's so-and-so elders and so-and-so stewards. They were actually the second generation of cultivators. Although these people might not be very strong, each of them had a deep background. If they really provoked the big shots behind them, it would indeed not be a small problem. At that moment, Su Lingchong just happened to walk past with Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang. Zhong Pingliang winked at Lin Yi, and Lin Yi nodded in understanding. In this kind of situation where the situation was unclear, it was better for Zhong Pingliang to sneak into Rushing Sky Pavilion than to hole up with him in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Apart from other things, he could at least get some useful information that might come in handy in the future. Senior brother Su, look. That guy with that pretentious face is Lin Yi. Kong Xiaoming took the opportunity to whisper into Su Lingchong's ear. He couldn't wait for Su Lingchong to deal with Lin Yi right now. He wanted Lin Yi to embarrass himself in front of everyone. Let's see how he'd be able to stay in the welcoming pavilion after that. Unfortunately, Su Lingchong didn't go along with his wishes. He was the grandson of Rushing Sky Pavilion's third elder. Dealing with a mere newcomer from the secular world in this kind of situation would not only dirty his hands, but he would also be laughed at by the second generation of the same circle. He wouldn't do something that would lower his status. Chapter 35-56. He didn't even bother to look at Lin Yi and walked to the middle. Although the group of second-generation cultivators were arrogant, they respectfully called him Master Su when they saw him. After all, Su Lingchong was not only stronger than them, but also had a stronger background. If they offended him, not only would they be in trouble, but also their family's background would be implicated. They wouldn't do such a stupid thing. These two are from Soaring Pavilion, so they'll be my people in the future. You guys take care of them. Su Lingchong pointed at Kong Xiaoming and Kong Xiaoming as he greeted the group of second-generation cultivators. Originally, the second-generation cultivators looked down on Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang from the secular world from the bottom of their hearts, but for the sake of Su Lingchong, and the fact that these two people were good at talking, they reluctantly accepted them. Since the two of them had latched onto young Master Su's thighs, they could be considered as people with some background. At the same time that Kong Mingming and Zhong Pingliang joined the second-generation cultivators party, also known as Soaring Pavilion, on the other side, Dongfang Badeo and Lawless Fist also mixed into the small circle on the left of the second-generation cultivators as they wished. Unlike the arrogant second-generation cultivators, most of the people in this circle were not young. The youngest was a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s, and their average strength was higher than that of the others present. At least they were masters who had just stepped into the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. Although they didn't talk to each other, they all looked scheming, strong and overbearing, and not easy to mess with. These people are all from Mysterious Pavilion. Although they don't have a deep background like the second-generation cultivators, after all, they are older, and their strength is generally much stronger than the masters of the same level. It's better to avoid them in the future. The bitter senior brother continued to advise Lin Yi and Zhong Pingliang, and these guys are the most difficult to deal with, and they often take advantage of their seniority. Although some people are older than them, they broke through Heaven stage earlier, so they look young. The advantage of these people is that behind them is the Master of Mysterious Pavilion. It is said that the Master of Mysterious Pavilion is one of the most powerful people in the North Island of Heaven stage. He is very difficult to get along with, and he is very protective. Even the Soaring Sky Pavilion's Pavilion Master was his junior. Therefore, it's best if we don't get involved with these people. You also know that in the secular world, there's such a saying as Pingxi. We also have it here. If these old things don't do well, they'll blame you. When the time comes, if the pavilion master is still willing to stand up for such a small matter, we'll be the ones to suffer. Lin Yi and the other two could only look at each other speechlessly. The second generation of cultivators couldn't afford to offend them, and neither could the old man. No matter who they met, they had to tuck their tails between their legs and behave. Of the three pavilions, Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest. The most depressing thing was that these old fellows actually knew how to blackmail. Is this the cultivation world? Come on. Let me introduce you to our Blue Cloud Pavilion's own newcomers. Just like you, they are all grassroots rogue cultivators. However, they are selected from all over the island. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin Yi and the other two to the last remaining small circle. If the first impression that the second generation of cultivators from Soaring Pavilion gave people was that they were ostentatious, and the first impression that the old men from Mysterious Pavilion gave people was that they were powerful, then the first impression that the grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion gave people was that they were a bunch of loose sand. Their average strength was the weakest of the three circles. Generally, they were only at the late stage of Heaven stage. There weren't many peak late stage Heaven stage, and those who had reached the Great Perfection stage were even rarer. They had neither strength nor background. More than a dozen of them just stood there loosely, occasionally conversing with each other in a low voice. They didn't even have the confidence to speak a little louder. It could be seen how weak they were. However, this small circle was divided into several groups. Each of them did their own things. The bitter senior apprentice brother led Lin Yi and the other two in front of everyone and introduced them, fellow junior apprentice brothers. These two beside me are newcomers from the secular world, Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. In the future, they will also be our Blue Cloud Pavilion's preparatory disciples. You can all get to know each other. It was Lin Yi's first time here, and while he was stronger than everyone here, he didn't want to show off. The main reason he came here was to meet the pill god Medicine Saint Zhongliju, not to fight with these people. Therefore, he and Xiao Ran cooperatively greeted the crowd. However, the crowd only glanced at the two of them coldly. They were not even willing to greet them, let alone communicate with them. We're all new here, and we're not familiar with each other yet. We'll get to know each other slowly. The bitter senior apprentice brother's face turned red as he tried to save himself. Even the bitter senior apprentice brother didn't expect these people to be so cold, and the most embarrassing thing was that Lin Yi had to laugh at him so quickly. No matter what, he was still an outstanding disciple of the previous generation of the Welcome Pavilion, and he was appointed by Blue Cloud Pavilion to be the manager of the Welcome Pavilion. He was one of the two manager brothers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion here. In the future, he would be in charge of their daily training, missions, and resource allocation. These people really didn't give him any face at all. It's fine, we'll get to know each other in the future. Lin Yi patted the bitter senior apprentice brother in understanding. He could already tell that this bitter senior apprentice brother was a good person, but he didn't have much prestige, and his personality wasn't strong enough either. Even these newcomers didn't respect him, and it was purely because they saw him as a nice guy that was easy to bully. But what made Lin Yi confused was that he, Xiao Ran, and the others were all Sky Class Late Phase Peak, and that was why they were able to come here. Why were these people in front of them only at Sky Class Late Phase, and yet they were able to come here? But this wasn't a good question to ask under the current circumstances, and Lin Yi didn't ask. He planned to ask when there was no one else around. But at this time, a person walked out from the crowd of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was the only Sky Class Late Phase Peak expert in this group. His specific age was unknown, but from his appearance, he didn't seem to be more than 30 years old. He walked in front of Lin Yi, looked up and down at Lin Yi, and said with disdain, "Came up from the secular world. To think that in the secular world, that country bumpkin place, there are actually people who know how to cultivate. It's really an eye-opener for me. To be able to come to our heaven-class island is already the blessing of 8 generations of ancestors, right? The moment he said that, the other rookies standing by the side roared with laughter. Originally, they were the lowest of the lowest in this place as grassroots itinerant cultivators. They could only be submissive, not daring to speak, but after hearing those words, they immediately realized that they were not the worst. There were people even lower than them. Chapter 35-57. For a moment, this group of people actually found a sense of superiority in Lin Yi and Xiao Ran. Their indifferent expressions just now were replaced by laughter. Lin Yi was fine. He had long developed the habit of not showing his emotions on his face along the way in the secular world. However, Xiao Ran's expressions suddenly changed. This group of people behaved like quails in front of others, not even daring to speak a little louder. Only in front of us, they pretend to be big wolves. Not only are they grassroots loose cultivators, but they also call us country bumpkins. Compared to those arrogant and despotic second-generation cultivators, this group of people who only know how to bully their own people are even more hateful. However, Xiao Ran also knew that he could only think about it in his heart. Back then, wasn't his family also ostracized by those ancient sects? This kind of phenomenon happened everywhere, so there was nothing wrong with it. Junior brothers, calm down, calm down. Take a step back and everything will be fine. Fighting in this welcome pavilion will be severely punished. Senior brother Ku hurriedly tried to persuade them. He was afraid that Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would fight out of anger. If that happened, not only would they be severely punished, but even he, the steward's senior brother, would also be implicated. Of course, there was one kind of competition that was allowed, and that was a challenge. However, he was also afraid that Lin Yi and Xiao Ran would be at a disadvantage, so he couldn't tell them about the challenge. After all, from senior brother Ku's point of view, those from the secular world certainly didn't have a solid foundation in cultivation compared to those from the Heaven Realm North Island. After all, the thinness of the heaven and earth spiritual chi couldn't be compared to mental cultivation methods. Over the years, there were some experts from the secular world who successfully reached the top and entered the upper echelons of the various sects on Middle Island, but they were in the minority. Lin Yi nodded lightly. He had seen too many of these people and was already numb to it. Moreover, with his strength, he could even kill these people in seconds. Even if he faced senior brother Ku, he wouldn't be weak. However, Lin Yi came here for a different purpose, so he didn't need to lower himself to their level. However, one thing could be seen from the behavior of these people. The reason why Blue Cloud Pavilion was the weakest of the 3 pavilions was not because they were grassroots loose cultivators. A pitiful person would definitely have a hateful side to them. Regardless of whether it was strength or background, these people's starting point was already lower than the people from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Pavilion. Yet, they only knew how to bully their own people. It would be a miracle if they could still make Blue Cloud Pavilion stronger. Seeing that Lin Yi had chosen to exercise forbearance, Xiao Ran naturally wouldn't make a move. His strength wasn't as tyrannical as Lin Yi's. Moreover, he'd made up his mind to keep a low profile and cultivate, so he naturally wouldn't act rashly. However, the 2 of them chose to exercise forbearance, but it didn't mean that the other party would let them go. The heaven-rank Great Perfection stage leader walked in front of the 2 of them and sneered, "What? You look like you're not convinced. You want to spar with me? Alright, I, Meng Tong, am famous for being willing to help others. Then, I'll reluctantly practice with you and let you know the difference between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. Shall we have a duel? Hee hee. If you're willing, then as you wish. I haven't fought anyone in the secular world for a long time. Because no one dares to fight with me." Lin Yi smiled indifferently. He didn't want to cause trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. If this person wanted to practice, then so be it. If he didn't get rid of these flies, then who knew how many things would happen in the future. Moreover, to fight someone like him, Lin Yi didn't even need to reveal his true strength. He only needed to suppress his strength to the great perfection of the late stage of heaven stage. He would be able to torture him to death. Meng Tong, are you causing trouble again? At this time, a low and deep voice suddenly sounded from behind everyone. Lin Yi turned his head to look. The person who came was a man who looked to be in his 30s. The aura on his body was very strong, even stronger than the bitter senior brother who was in the early stage of foundation establishment. It seemed that he was at least an expert in the early stage of foundation establishment. This person is called Meng Juiguang. Like me, he is a steward of our Blue Cloud Pavilion in the Welcome Pavilion. His strength and ranking are above me. Don't offend him in the future. The bitter senior brother hurriedly introduced him to Lin Yi and Lin Yi in a low voice. Another person who couldn't be offended. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had only been in the Welcome Pavilion for a short while, but he had already heard this sentence from the bitter senior brother no less than 3 times. It seemed that in the entire Welcome Pavilion, whether it was inside or outside of Blue Cloud Pavilion, there was no one who could be offended. They were all great gods that couldn't be provoked. Similarly, this senior brother Meng Juiguang was a steward of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. His entrance was much more impressive than that of the bitter senior brother. Everywhere he went, the disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion hurriedly greeted him respectfully. In contrast, on the side of the bitter senior brother, other than Lin Yi and Xiao Ran who were still respectful to him, no one else gave him any face. Seeing Meng Juiguang appear, Meng Tong, who was acting all high and mighty just a moment ago, immediately bowed as he walked up to greet Meng Juiguang, flattering him. How could that be? I'm here to introduce the situation to the 2 junior brothers from the secular world, lest we embarrass our Clear Cloud Pavilion in the future, am I right? 2 junior brothers from the secular world. Meng Juiguang looked at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran meaningfully and said, it's not up to a newcomer like you to meddle. Bitter junior brother, since these 2 junior brothers from the secular world were painstakingly brought here by you, you will also be responsible for teaching them in the future. This will prevent them from bringing in the bad habits of the secular world and spoiling the reputation of our Blue Cloud Pavilion. Bitter senior brother was just a nickname. Bitter senior brother wasn't really bitter, but Meng Juiguang was the senior brother steward of Blue Cloud Pavilion here. For him to call bitter senior brother by this nickname was a little disrespectful no matter how you looked at it. Yes, senior brother Meng. On the contrary, the bitter senior brother didn't feel that there was anything wrong with it. He simply smiled and nodded. Lin Yi also smiled faintly. However, Xiao Ran clearly wasn't that scheming. Even his breathing was a little hurried. Although this Meng Juiguang's words were dignified, the disdain in his words was simply the same as Meng Tong's. Moreover, his words were clearly announcing to everyone that the 2 of them were trash that he looked down on. That was why they were thrown to the bitter senior brother. In this way, wouldn't Meng Tong and the others become even more unscrupulous in the future? Meng Juiguang only glanced at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran before turning his head to look at Meng Tong and said, Meng Tong, don't think that I will be biased towards you no matter what just because we came from the same village. Let me tell you, not only will I not be biased towards you, I will be especially strict with you in the future. Do you hear me? As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed again. Chapter 35-58. Moreover, the 2 of them came from the same village. Needless to say, their relationship was much closer than everyone else's. How was this a warning to Meng Tong? He was clearly announcing that Meng Tong was on his side. He was supporting Meng Tong. I know. Don't worry, ninth cousin, I definitely won't embarrass you. Meng Tong chuckled, a proud expression overflowing from his face. As for the way he addressed Meng Juiguang, he also used the way they addressed their relatives in the village. He was also showing off to everyone. He was originally a rare heaven stage great perfection expert in this group. Now that he had a backer like Meng Juiguang, needless to say, he would become the big brother of the newcomers in the future. The situation was stronger than the person. Originally, the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples were all acting on their own, but after Meng Juiguang's words, the two small groups that had separated earlier, although not all of them could be said to have formed, most of the new disciples immediately gathered around Meng Tong's side. In order to live a more comfortable life in the future, they naturally had to choose a side at this time. Otherwise, if someone were to make things difficult for them, their days would be miserable. Of course, in this kind of situation, the relationship established was not reliable at all. These people were all fence-sitters, going to Meng Tong's side just to get some benefits. No wonder this Clear Cloud Pavilion was in such a mess, and the atmosphere was so bad. In this way, Lin Yi and Meng Tong were completely excluded from the newcomer group. Standing together with senior brother Bitter, they became completely isolated. Brother Lin, it seems that our situation isn't very good. Xiao Ran smiled bitterly. Humans were social creatures. No matter where they were, being excluded from the group usually wouldn't end well. Especially now that they had just arrived and their strength wasn't very outstanding. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently. Don't worry. Don't we still have senior brother Bitter? We won't suffer too much. In the secular world, Lin Yi had always been a rogue cultivator. Even if he eventually stood at the peak of the cultivation world, he still relied on strength. Not a backer. Otherwise, if Lin Yi knew his own background earlier, he could just say, Lin Dongfang is my grandfather, and Yang Ming is my master. Wouldn't I be invincible? Comparing backing was a sign of weakening one's own strength. Hey! Junior brother Lin Yi, don't expect too much from me. Although I'm one of the two managers, the power lies with senior brother Meng. Our Blue Cloud Pavilion trusts him more, so there are many things that I can't say much about. Senior brother Wook shook his head with a bitter smile. He actually had a backer. He was an elder of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, his backer went to East Island to complete a task, and there was no news of him after that. So, he was in trouble. However, in order to not let Lin Yi and Xiao Ran worry too much, he still comforted them, but don't worry, junior brothers, it's within my authority. If it's within my power, I'll definitely help. Xiao Ran smiled sheepishly. Even senior brother Wu didn't have much confidence in himself. It seemed like the days ahead were going to be tough. On the other hand, Lin Yi didn't mind it too much. He had the Jade Space as a trump card, so he didn't have to worry about training. His next task was to familiarize himself with the environment and find out more about Elixir God Zhongli Ju. After that, he could plan his next step. As they were talking, they saw the head of the welcoming pavilion, Hu Yunfeng, and the vice head of the welcoming pavilion, Feng Song. They walked up to the stage in the middle of the hall, instantly attracting the attention of all the newcomers. This was obviously the welcoming ceremony that senior brother Wu Qiu had mentioned. Logically speaking, this was the perfect opportunity to establish their prestige in front of all the newcomers, and the head of the welcoming pavilion and the vice head of the welcoming pavilion should show up together. But this third head of the Blue Cloud Pavilion was still busy with his so-called chores, and he didn't even have the chance to show his face. It was quite pitiful. Hu Yunfeng looked around. Wherever her gaze landed, the hubbub immediately quieted down. Even the group of second-generation cultivators in the middle was no exception. This wasn't because they wanted to give him face, but because they were completely subdued by Hu Yunfeng's aura. When one's strength reached a high enough level, one's actions would be able to subdue people, and this Hu Yunfeng was the head of the welcoming pavilion. Evidently, his reputation wasn't just for show. Newcomers, no matter where you come from, no matter what your background is, since you've come to our welcoming pavilion, from today onwards, you are all outer sect preparatory disciples. Everyone will be treated the same. For the next year, the welcoming pavilion will provide you with training resources that you couldn't even imagine in the past. There is only one rule for the distribution of these resources, and that is that only the strong will get it. A ranking competition will be held regularly, and the higher your ranking, the more training resources you will receive, and the lower your ranking will be. Everything will be fought for with your own strength. Blaming others is the behavior of the weak. Within a year, if you can successfully build your foundation, then congratulations, you will be able to enter the 3 great pavilions that everyone dreams of. You will receive better training resources, and your strength and cultivation will improve. However, if you still haven't built your foundation in a year, then I'm sorry, but the welcoming pavilion doesn't raise idlers, and it definitely won't raise trash. You will be sent to the toughest place on the island to do hard labor, and you will no longer be given any training resources. If you can't break through, you can only spend the rest of your life in poverty, and don't even think about taking another step forward. The above is the most important rule of the welcoming pavilion. Does anyone have any questions? Hu Yunfeng looked at the crowd below the stage and asked in a clear voice. May I ask, head of the pavilion, when will the first ranking competition be held? Today. Someone below the stage asked. Hu Yunfeng stroked his white beard and smiled, of course not. The first ranking competition will be held next month today. If that's the case, then how will this month's training resources be distributed? Will everyone be treated equally? I'm afraid it will be very difficult to make it truly fair. The person continued to ask. Everyone immediately pricked up their ears. This question was very reasonable. After all, not all resources could be taken out and distributed equally like pills. Many natural resources like cultivation caves could not be distributed fairly, and they couldn't let everyone exchange cultivation caves every day. Not to mention cultivation, it would be very tiring. Chapter 35-59. As soon as he said that, the entire place was in an uproar. The group of second-generation cultivators from Soaring Pavilion was naturally proud of themselves. As for the newcomers from the other 2 pavilions, they did not look so good, especially those from Blue Cloud Pavilion. Every one of them had a bitter look on their faces. He's already showing favoritism to the second-generation cultivators from the very beginning. How can he say that he treats everyone equally? The grassroots row cultivators below the stage immediately became agitated. If the rules of welcoming pavilion had always been to show favoritism to the second-generation cultivators, it would have been fine. Although everyone was dissatisfied, they could only accept it. However, Hu Yunfeng had put on a fair and just attitude. He had clearly given these grassroots row cultivators hope, but the reality was so cruel. No wonder they were so agitated. Hu Yunfeng's expression changed slightly when he heard the voice, but he quickly regained his composure. He looked at the crowd and said indifferently, all of you came from the secular cultivation world or the cultivation tribes on the island. What do you think is fair in the cultivation world? Soaring Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion are stronger than Blue Cloud Pavilion. This arrangement is based on overall strength. If you think you are capable, enter Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future and turn Blue Cloud Pavilion into the #1 pavilion on the northern island. I'm afraid the best cave abode will be Blue Cloud Pavilion, right? So, what is favoritism? I'm doing this for the sake of fairness and justice. I have no selfish motives. Even if I arrange the best cave abode for you, I won't gain anything from it, right? Although his words were dignified, they were telling everyone the truth. People were stronger than people. However, although the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion felt uncomfortable when they heard that, there was nothing they could do. With just a few words, Hu Yunfeng had already put the cruelty of cultivation in front of everyone, especially for the weak grassroots rogue cultivators from Blue Cloud Pavilion. To sum it up, it could be summed up in 8 words. If there is a way, you want to go, but if there is no way, you will die. Fairness. When had there ever been true fairness in the world? The strong were respected. This was the most essential truth of the world. It was the same everywhere. After Hu Yunfeng's speech, the welcoming ceremony was considered to have ended hastily. For all the newcomers, what happened next was what they were most concerned about. A cave dwelling. According to Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, the best cultivation abodes were reserved for the second-generation cultivators of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, the slightly inferior ones for the old men of the Mysterious Pavilion, and the worst ones for the new grassroots cultivators of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. The general trend was already like this. It was impossible to change it by relying on the strength of the newcomers. For the grassroots rookies of Blue Cloud Pavilion, the most realistic thing right now was how to choose the better cave abodes among the worst. After all, there was still a need to pick the tallest among the dwarves. Even in the worst batch of cultivation caves, there were still good and bad ones among them. He couldn't afford to offend the second-generation cultivator of Soaring Sky Pavilion, nor could he afford to offend the old man of Mysterious Pavilion. As for the rest of the people from Blue Cloud Pavilion, they were all grassroots rogue cultivators with no foundation, so they could at least compete with each other. Under the lead of Meng Juiguang and senior brother Ku Bai, everyone walked toward the cultivation abodes of Blue Cloud Pavilion. It was not too far from the welcoming pavilion, just in the mountains behind it. Brother Lin, the spiritual energy on this mountain is very rich. In comparison, the spiritual energy in the secular world is so thin that it can be ignored. The difference is more than 100 times. No wonder everyone dreams of coming to this heavenly island, Xiao Ran said to Lin Yi with emotion. Lin Yi could not help but nod. The two of them came from the secular world, so they felt this especially deeply. They did not feel it when they were in the welcoming pavilion, but now that they stepped into the mountain, they immediately felt the spiritual energy in the air. This was simply unimaginable in the secular world. However, Lin Yi had the space in the jade pendant, so his requirement for the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not particularly high. At this time, he pretended to be surprised. Hey! You really are a country bumpkin who has never seen the world, making a fuss about such a little spiritual energy. You are really a disgrace to our Blue Cloud Pavilion. Meng Tong, who was walking in front, turned his head and ridiculed. The others on the side also echoed and laughed. They were originally thinking about the matter of the cave residences. They were still quite nervous, but when they looked at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, the two country bumpkins from the secular world, they immediately found their confidence. Needless to say, the two worst cultivation abodes belonged to these two. Being ridiculed and ridiculed so unscrupulously, Xiao Ran's face suddenly turned red. However, Lin Yi did not react to this and only faintly smiled. This group of people were nothing more than clowns with a twisted mentality. They were suppressed by the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, so they ran in front of him to find a sense of existence. There was no need to take it to heart. Seeing this, the bitter senior apprentice brother could only smile bitterly and help the two out. Junior apprentice brothers, you may not know this, but the mountain we are standing on is not an ordinary mountain, it is a spiritual mountain. There is a huge spiritual jade mine buried under it, so spiritual energy will come out from the ground and dissipate into the air. It is much richer than other places on the island. Spiritual jade mine. Could it be that this spiritual jade mine contains spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Lin Yi could not help but be moved. This reminded him of the Jin Qi energy stone in the secular world. That's right. You can mine spiritual jades from the spiritual jade mine, and the spiritual jades contain very rich spiritual energy. It's an excellent item to assist in cultivation. According to the rules, the Welcome Pavilion will give you a piece of spiritual jade every month. You'll know when you use it, explained the bitter senior brother. A piece of spiritual jade will be given every month. This treatment sounded good, but he did not know the specific effect. Compared to his own space in the jade pendant, he did not know which was better. However, from what Lin Yi felt, even if this spiritual jade was stronger than the energy stones, it was not as rich as the space in the jade pendant. However, Lin Yi was more eager to know at the moment. Although spiritual jades sounded higher than the energy stones in the secular world, they also contained spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Since his space in the jade pendant could recharge the energy stones in the secular world, then did it also have the same effect on spiritual jades? For example, if other people used spiritual jades, could he also use them to recharge? If spiritual jades were really better than the space in the jade pendant, and he could recharge them, then it would be a great tool for cultivation. This question was related to his future cultivation plan. When the spiritual jades were in his hands, he had to test it as soon as possible. Senior Brother Ku, are these cultivation caves also related to the spirit jade mine? Xiao Ran, who was at the side, suddenly asked. That's right. The cultivation cave abode is located on top of this spirit jade mine. Although the density of the spiritual energy varies greatly depending on the location, even the worst one is at least 10 times denser than the one outside. As for the better ones, the density is 100 or even 1,000 times denser. Chapter 3560. Lin Yi and Xiao Ran came to a sudden realization. The worst was only 10 times, while the better ones were 100 or 1,000 times. It was not an exaggeration to describe the disparity between the heaven and earth. It was no wonder these people reacted so fiercely to the cave-dwelling allocation. The bitter senior martial brother sighed and continued, for newcomers like you, spiritual jades are very difficult to obtain, except for the one that is distributed every month. Therefore, the most crucial thing that will affect your cultivation progress is the cave abode. With a good cave dwelling, your cultivation will naturally progress by leaps and bounds. With a bad cave dwelling, although it is slightly better than outside, that is all. Although the bitter senior brother's words were directed at Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, the others beside them could also hear it. For a moment, everyone unconsciously fell silent. Although the ranking tournament would be held in a month's time, this was the first month's starting line, and there was already a huge gap between them. On top of that, these grassroots rogue cultivators from the Clear Cloud Pavilion were much weaker than those from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and Profound Secrets Pavilion. Although it seemed like they still had a chance to make a comeback through the monthly ranking tournament, the difficulty of doing so was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. They were originally weak, and now they were allocated the worst cultivation resources. If they could not obtain a better result in the ranking competition, they could only continue to be ranked last and continue to enjoy the worst cultivation resources. In this vicious cycle, the gap between them would only grow larger and larger. It was likely that they would not be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. It could be seen that the weakness of Blue Cloud Pavilion was already fated from the beginning. At this time, Meng Tong suddenly sneered and said, "Heh, even if I can't compare to the people of Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion, as long as I can become the strongest in Blue Cloud Pavilion, I will still be able to ascend to Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future. However, as for the country bumpkins of the secular world, I advise you not to hold such unrealistic hopes. Just prepare to do hard labor in a year's time, ha ha ha." That's right, Blue Cloud Pavilion was originally inferior to Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion, but as long as they could step on their own people, they would still be able to soar in the future. After hearing Meng Tong's words, the eyes of the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion lit up. They stared at Lin Yi and Xiao Ren as though they were prey. Persimmons had to be pinched first. Needless to say, these two country bumpkins from the secular world were the weakest persimmons. Lin Yi and Xiao Ren looked at each other helplessly. They hadn't even done anything. He inexplicably became the target of public criticism. Speaking of what happened after he came to this heavenly island, it was really fucking terrible. But it didn't matter. He would deal with it when it came. Lin Yi was a strong person who had killed his way up from the secular world. How could he be afraid of this local grassroots who bullied the weak and feared the strong? While they were talking, Meng Juiguang, who was at the forefront, had already stopped in his tracks. At the foot of the mountain, there was a dense cluster of cultivation caves. There were a total of 15 of them, and each of them was not big. They were about the height of a person, and their surface area was about 10 square meters. His gloomy gaze swept across everyone's faces. Meng Juiguang then opened his mouth and said, "There are 3 cultivation caves set up for you in this mountain. The one on the mountain peak has the densest spiritual qi, but it is now allocated to Soaring Sky Pavilion. The one on the mountainside has the second densest spiritual qi, and now belongs to Mysterious Pavilion. And the one allocated to you bunch of trash is the one at the foot of the mountain in front of you. It is the worst cultivation cave in the entire mountain. You better work hard. Hurry up and cultivate hard. Quickly give me a few more foundation establishment experts. Otherwise, I won't be able to raise my head in front of the stewards of the other 2 pavilions. Don't blame me for coming back to take care of you." Everyone looked at each other, not daring to speak. They had already accepted reality. Since he had entered the infamous Clear Cloud Pavilion, the treatment he received was the worst. That was something he had long expected. Among them, only Meng Tong and a few others had the qualifications to break through to the foundation establishment stage. The others didn't even dare to think about it. However, even if it is the worst cultivation cave, there are still good and bad inside. Meng Juiguang pointed at the entrances of the cultivation caves behind him and said, "You see these numbers at the entrances? Let me tell you, from number 1 to 15, the bigger the number, the thinner the density of spiritual qi inside. The density of spiritual qi inside number 1 can barely reach 100 times that of the outside, but after number 10, it is generally only about 10 times that of the outside." Speaking up to here, Meng Juiguang counted the number of newcomers present. There were exactly 15 people, and he couldn't help but reveal a playful expression. "Oh right, what I said just now is old history. In the past few years, there haven't been any newcomers sent up from the secular world, and Blue Cloud Pavilion usually only accepts 12 to 13 newcomers. The highest number ever was only 14. Therefore, cave number 15 has been abandoned for a long time. The spiritual qi inside has also been blocked by the pavilion master with an array. It was only today that it was reopened. However, as for the density of spiritual qi inside, it's hard to say. If you're lucky, it might be a little higher than the outside. If you're unlucky, I suggest that unlucky junior brother move out to cultivate in the open." Ha ha ha. Hearing up to here, everyone's expression suddenly changed. They were all on tenterhooks, afraid that they would become that unlucky guy. If they were assigned to cave number 15, they would really not be able to find a grave even if they cried. Okay, now we'll start assigning the caves. Those whose names are called, stand up. As Meng Juiguang spoke, he took out the register and began to assign the caves. He didn't have the slightest intention to discuss with senior brother Bitter. One had to know that Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng had said very clearly that the matter of the cave assignment was decided by the 2 senior brothers in charge of each pavilion. In other words, Senior Brother Bitter also had the right to speak on this matter. Seeing the group of newcomers' playful gazes fall on him, Senior Brother Bitter's face couldn't help but turn pale. If he continued to silently endure in such a critical situation, then in the future, he would never have the slightest bit of prestige in front of these newcomers. Senior Brother Meng, can I also take a look at the matter of the cave assignment? Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Senior Brother Bitter summoned up his courage and said, "What's there to look at? These caves are not assigned to you." Meng Juiguang glanced at him snappily. What Meng Juiguang said was right. The 3 pavilion masters and 6 stewards of the Welcome Pavilion had their own caves set up on a separate mountain. However, Senior Brother Bitter didn't ask about this matter at all. He could only murmur awkwardly, but, without waiting for Senior Brother Bitter to finish speaking, Meng Juiguang had already waved his hand and began to assign the caves. Xiao Hongkai. Chapter 3561. His own strength was not as good as others, and his only backer in the Blue Cloud Pavilion was now missing. He could not compare with others in all aspects. What else could he do but continue to be a coward and endure? Behind him, Lin Yi patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Senior Brother Xiao Hongkai was a good person, but unfortunately, no matter where he was, honest people were always the target of bullying. Turning his head to look at the newcomer who stood out, Lin Yi had a slight impression of him. Among the people who questioned Hu Yunfeng's unfairness at the welcoming ceremony, this Xiao Hongkai was the one who shouted the loudest. "Cousin Joe, don't forget me." In the crowd, Meng Tong suddenly became anxious. With a backer like Meng Juiguang here, he thought that cave residence number 1 was already in his pocket. He did not expect that the first person Meng Juiguang called out was not him, but Xiao Hongkai, who he had never met before. "What's the hurry?" Meng Juiguang glanced at him discontentedly, and then looked at Xiao Hongkai, who stood out, with a sneer on his face. Just before leaving the welcoming pavilion, he was specially called over by Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng, and it was aimed at this Xiao Hongkai. "Who asked this idiot to shout the loudest just now? You're just a grassroots rogue cultivator, yet you dare to talk about some bullshit fairness. Didn't anyone teach you before that in this cultivation world, fists are the fairest thing?" Being stared at by Meng Juiguang, Xiao Hongkai suddenly felt that something was wrong. At first, he thought that he had left a deep impression on this senior brother steward, so he was the first to take care of him. Now that he thought about it, the impression was indeed deep, but this might not be a good thing. As the saying goes, the bird that sticks out gets shot. Sure enough, Meng Juiguang looked at him and sneered, "Congratulations, junior brother Qiao. From now on, the 15th abode at the foot of the mountain is yours. Cave residence number 15 at the foot of the mountain." That was the worst immortal's cave in history that was not much better than an open-air one. Xiao Hongcai's mind could not help but go into a daze. Hearing the surrounding rookies' gloating laughter, she finally snapped out of it. She clenched her fists as veins popped up on her forehead. "Why should I go to the worst cave abode? Senior brother Meng, I didn't offend you. Wasn't the cave allocated according to one's strength? Since the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Profound Secrets Pavilion are strong and occupy the best spots, then even though we are the weakest, we can still distribute the spots according to our strength, right? I'm an expert at the peak of the late stage of the Heaven Realm, even if I'm not at the Perfection Realm. Why was he assigned to cave abode number 15? You didn't offend me, but unfortunately, I can't afford to offend the people you offended." Meng Juiguang smiled coldly. "Why? Is Junior Qiao not satisfied with my arrangements? Then you can sue me, go to the head of the welcoming pavilion and sue me." This order was obviously hinted by Hu Yunfeng. Therefore, Meng Juiguang was not afraid of Qiao Hongcai's thorns at all. Qiao Hongcai gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling, he still did not dare to contradict Meng Juiguang in public. Now at least there was a cave abode number 15. Although it was the worst cave abode in history, it was better than nothing. Although he did not know whether Meng Juiguang had something to rely on or was really not afraid of him complaining. At this moment, he could only bear it and said, "I don't dare, but since you want us to break through to the Foundation establishment realm, then since I've been allocated the worst cave abode, it's good that you don't blame me if we don't succeed." Shout. You said you don't dare, but you actually dare to talk terms with me. Then you are still not satisfied. That's fine, I have always been a very fair and democratic person. As Meng Juiguang said, he pointed at Meng Tong and said, "I will now give the best cave abode number 1 to Meng Tong, but I will also give you a chance to challenge him, as long as you can win. How about the cave abode number 1 belongs to you? According to the rules of the cultivation world, the strong are respected. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. If you can't even beat him, I can't give you the cave abode number 1, can I? Then when the time comes, will junior brother Meng Tong also say that I am unfair? When he can't break through to the Foundation establishment realm, is it because of me?" As Meng Juiguang said so, Meng Tong immediately jumped out excitedly. He provoked Qiao Hongcai and said, "Do you want to fight? If it wasn't for Cousin Joe's face, I would usually be too lazy to bother with trash like you who is only at the peak of the late stage of heaven stage. But today I will give you this chance. And I am willing to lose. If I lose, I am willing to take the cave abode number 15, and if I can't break through to the Foundation establishment realm, I will not blame anyone and let senior brother Meng scold me. Qiao Hongcai, junior brother Meng Tong is of noble character and unquestionable integrity. What do you think?" Meng Juiguang was very satisfied with Meng Tong's reaction. Now he wanted to see what Qiao Hongcai had to say. Qiao Hongcai looked at the eager Meng Tong, and his face suddenly turned green and purple. He was only an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven stage, and he had just broken through not long ago. His foundation was not very stable, and the other party was an expert at the peak of the late stage of heaven stage. They were at least 2 levels apart. How could he fight? If they really fought, he might not even be able to take a casual move from the other party. Seeing that Qiao Hongcai flinched, Meng Tong disdainfully said, "Gutless trash, I don't think you should be called Qiao Hongcai in the future. Just call yourself lumber waste." Meng Juiguang had already expected this. He smiled indifferently and turned to look at all the newcomers and said, "What I said just now is not only effective for him, but also for all of you. If you are not satisfied with the cave abode allocated to you, no problem. As long as you can beat Meng Tong here, the cave abode number 1 is yours. Of course, if you have a good relationship in private, you can also exchange cave abodes in private. I won't interfere in this." Meng Tong cooperatively puffed out his chest. There were 15 newcomers present. Except for Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, among the other local newcomers, only he, Meng Tong, was at the peak of the late stage of heaven stage. No one could match him at all. As for Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, these 2 country bumpkins from the secular world, even if they were also at the great perfection realm, he would not put them in his eyes. No matter what, he was still a sitting cannon on Heaven Stage Island. Even if their strength levels were the same, his real strength was much stronger than the fake outsiders in the secular world. There was no comparison between the 2. Seeing that no one dared to say anything, Meng Juiguang continued to call out names, Lin Yi. Chapter 3562. Cave Abode number 14. Meng Juiguang looked at Lin Yi mockingly and said, "You should really thank this junior brother Lumber Waste. If it wasn't for him stirring up trouble during the welcoming ceremony, cave abode number 15 would have been prepared for you. Now, although cave abode number 14 is the worst compared to the other caves, compared to cave abode number 15, it can be said that your ancestors have done good deeds." This Lin Yi was an outsider, and he was brought here by Lumber Waste. It would be strange if Meng Juiguang gave him a good attitude. Immediately after, without waiting for Lin Yi to speak, Meng Juiguang continued to call out names: Xiao Ran, cave abode number 13. Here. Xiao Ran responded and walked to Lin Yi's side. After thinking for a while, he turned his head and whispered to Lin Yi, "Brother Lin, why don't you come to my cave abode number 13 to cultivate together in the future? Although it's not much better than cave abode number 14, it will still be of some help." When Xiao Ran was in the common world, he was indebted to Lin Yi for taking care of him. Now that he was on Sky Class Island, he saw that Lin Yi got the 14th cave, and he was doing better than him. He naturally had to return the favor. From his point of view, a drop of water should be returned with a spring of water. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would be letting down his conscience. Ha! Cultivate together. Junior brother Lumber Waste, didn't you teach them the rules? Meng Juiguang was strong, so his hearing was naturally good. After hearing Xiao Ran's words, he immediately laughed mockingly. Lumber Waste's face was full of awkwardness. He could only go forward and explain to the two of them, junior brothers, the spiritual chi produced in the cultivation cave abode every day is fixed. If two people cultivate together, the effect will be shared. Even if it's cave abode number 1, if two people enter, the effect will at most be similar to cave abode number 7 or 8. Moreover, after a long time, the cave abode's spiritual chi will be overdrawn, and the effect will slowly deteriorate. Therefore, the pavilion master has a rule that each cave abode can only accommodate one person to cultivate. I see. Only now did Lin Yi understand. He patted Xiao Ran's shoulder and said, "I appreciate your good intentions, but the cultivation method I cultivate in is rather special. The requirement for the density of spiritual energy isn't too high. Abode 14 is already sufficient. Besides, didn't this senior brother Meng say that there's still a chance to change? His cultivation technique is special." These words made Meng Juiguang sneer in his heart. He had been in the North Island of Heaven stage for so many years, but he had never heard of a cultivator who didn't need the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, unless he was a physical cultivator. However, Lin Yi was clearly a master of inner force. Wasn't this bragging? However, from Meng Juiguang's point of view, Lin Yi was putting on a strong front because he didn't want others to look down on him. Meng Juiguang was even more disapproving of his last sentence. Although Lin Yi was at the peak of the late stage of the heaven rank, he was still at the peak of the Great Perfection realm. But the Great Perfection realm in the secular world might not be as powerful as the late stage of the heaven rank in the North Island of Heaven stage. As for Lin Yi, he probably didn't understand the situation yet. He thought that he was standing at the top of the cultivation world in the secular world. After coming to Heaven Stage Island, he really didn't know what he was talking about. Why was Heaven Stage Island called Heaven Stage Island? Didn't it mean that on the island, there were as many Heaven Stage as dogs? Heaven Stage was here. Just the most ordinary disciple, and he thought that he was an expert? Brother Lin, you're preparing to. Xiao Ran's heart skipped a beat, but he couldn't help but admire Lin Yi's calm expression as he nodded. Although he was very dissatisfied with Meng Juiguang and the others like Lin Yi, he didn't have the confidence to challenge Meng Tong, who was at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage. After all, no one knew how big the gap between the Heaven Stage Island and the secular world was between the same realm. The risk was not small. While they were talking, Meng Juiguang had already finished allocating everyone. The group of rookies were both happy and worried. Those who were allocated a good cave abode were naturally overjoyed, while those who were allocated a rotten cave abode were all frowning, as though they had lost their parents. The only thing that comforted them was that the 3 worst cave residences had been occupied by Lin Yi and the other 2 unlucky guys in advance. I'll say it one last time. If you are dissatisfied, stand up and challenge Meng Tong. If I hear you complaining behind his back again after today, then don't blame me for being impolite. Meng Juiguang glanced at the group of newcomers coldly. He had made up his mind to help Meng Tong establish his prestige. Anyway, Meng Tong was naturally his direct subordinate. Today, he took the opportunity to establish his prestige, and in the future, he could better help him manage this group of newcomers. Who else is dissatisfied? Hurry up and stand up. Meng Tong flaunted his strength at the side. This was a good opportunity that Meng Juiguang had specially prepared for him to show off. He would not let it go easily. It would be best if there was an idiot who did not have eyes to stand up and let this group of people see his strength. Unfortunately, although Meng Tong was full of expectations, the newcomers present did not dare to rashly stand up and challenge his despotic power. Even if the cave residences that were allocated were not ideal, they would at most curse a few words in their hearts. Challenging Meng Tong, who was at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage, in this kind of situation. Wouldn't that be asking to be humiliated? TSK, a group of gutless cowards. Meng Tong scolded disdainfully. When his gaze swept past Lin Yi, his eyes suddenly lit up and he said, "You country bumpkin from the secular world, didn't you say that you wanted to challenge me before? Why, now you're a turtle hiding in its shell and not daring to move." Hee hee. I didn't say anything. I just wanted to give this opportunity to show off to others. But since everyone is so modest, then I can only reluctantly refuse. Lin Yi chuckled and walked out of the crowd. Maybe everyone thinks that you're too easy to fight, so they're not willing to fight you. A chance to show off. Too easy to fight. Meng Tong seemed to have heard a shocking joke and laughed wildly. You country bumpkin from the secular world actually think that this is a chance to show off. The ignorant are really fearless. Today, I'll teach you what is called the gap between Heaven Stage Island and the secular world. Lin Yi smiled indifferently and turned to look at Meng Juiguang. Senior brother Meng, since you asked us to challenge you, I think it shouldn't violate the rules of the welcoming pavilion. I just want to know, what will happen if we kill or injure someone? Fists and feet have no eyes. As long as it's a formal challenge and both sides agree, no matter the death or injury, no one will be held responsible afterwards. Meng Juiguang curled his lips and said, but his face was full of sarcasm. Chapter 3563. However, even someone who had never seen the world felt that he was the most awesome. Wasn't this what a frog at the bottom of a well was like? Don't worry, no matter what, we are still fellow disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. At most, I will cripple you, not kill you. Meng Tong clenched his fists as he walked towards Lin Yi with a sinister smile. The surrounding people hastily retreated to the side, revealing expressions of anticipation. After all, this was the first battle they had witnessed since joining the Welcome Pavilion. Moreover, the two sides were this year's most powerful Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomer, Meng Tong, and the other was the secular world's Lin Yi. Both were very interesting characters, so they naturally had to enjoy this show. Junior brother Lin Yi, if you can't do it, hurry up and admit defeat. This way, the battle will be over and he won't be able to attack you anymore. The bitter senior brother hastily said to Lin Yi before retreating. Like everyone else, he didn't think highly of Lin Yi, and if Lin Yi stubbornly refused to admit defeat, then it would be very easy for him to lose his life. Although Xiao Ran had seen Lin Yi's strength in the secular world, he was also a little worried at this moment. However, he couldn't persuade Lin Yi to stop, so he could only say, "Brother Lin, you can do it." Lin Yi nodded to the two, then turned to look at Meng Tong, and lightly said, "Please." "Humph, you still dare to act cool in front of me when you're facing a disaster? You really don't know how to write the word death." Meng Tong laughed loudly as he pounced in front of Lin Yi. Without warning, he swept out with the 20th style of 1,000 legs. This was his usual martial skill. His 1,000 legs contained the strength of 1,000 caddies. Even if he were to face a native expert of the same level, it would be powerful enough to kill, not to mention that his opponent was just a fake from the secular world. After being hit by the leg wind, the bow, everyone's faces changed drastically. Only Lin Yi, the person in question, didn't panic at all. He didn't put on any tricks. What greeted him was the 15th move of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. Lin Yi was afraid that others would think that his strength was too high and that they would unite against a common enemy, so he did not use his strongest move. However, just the 15th style of the Wildfire 8 trigrams palm was enough to instantly kill a peak late-stage heaven rank expert. He didn't want to take Meng Tong's life. If that was the case, he probably wouldn't be able to continue staying on the North Island. Therefore, his goal was merely to establish his might and make others feel that he wasn't someone to be bullied. However, he wouldn't be so ruthless as to kill everyone the moment he appeared. If Meng Tong could back down, that would be great. If not, then bring it on. He did not kill Meng Tong. Those big shots wouldn't stand up for him. Bang! Boom! As the leg and the palm collided, Meng Tong was sent flying by Lin Yi's palm. His internal organs felt uncomfortable as if they had been displaced. Before he could struggle to get up, he spat out a mouthful of blood. It was a ghastly sight. Hiss! Everyone in the audience suddenly became quiet. There was only a series of gasps left. The gazes that looked at Lin Yi were all incomparably shocked. What kind of strength was able to send Meng Tong, a peak late-stage heaven rank expert, flying with one palm? Could it be that the people in the secular world were already overbearing to such an extent? Not only these newcomers, but even Meng Jueguang looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. One must know that although Meng Tong was a grassroots rogue cultivator, he was not considered weak in the heaven rank great perfection level. However, he couldn't be considered weak at the level of heaven stage great circle. In the end, he was defeated by a trash from the secular world in one move. This result was too unexpected. Thanks for letting me win. Lin Yi smiled lightly. In order not to expose his strength as a foundation establishment stage, he had already deliberately suppressed his strength to the heaven rank great perfection level. But even so, Meng Tong was still vulnerable in front of him. You can't even beat a trash from the secular world, what a waste. Meng Jueguang looked at the battered Meng Tong on the ground and scolded him resentfully. Originally, it was specially arranged for Meng Tong to be in the limelight, so that he could establish his power in front of these newcomers. But he didn't expect that mud could not hold up a wall. Now, the limelight was all snatched by this guy, Lin Yi. The strong were respected. The newcomers present were originally fence-sitters who did not have a firm stand. The reason why they spared no effort to curry favor with Meng Tong was purely because he was strong and had a strong background. It was purely because he was strong and had a strong background. Now that he was knocked down by Lin Yi in one move, the tides had changed. Although it could be said that because of the existence of Meng Jueguang, these people would not directly rely on Lin Yi. But at this moment, they looked at Lin Yi with reverence in their eyes. They knew that it would not be so easy for Meng Tong to subdue them in the future. At the very least, they had to first ask Lin Yi, this guy who hid his strength. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, after struggling for a moment, Meng Tong finally got up and looked at Lin Yi with eyes full of resentment. This time, he had lost a lot of face in front of everyone. He was defeated by a country bumpkin in one move. It was simply a great shame that could not be washed away in this life. If these words were to spread, he could forget about having a foothold in the welcome pavilion. Looking at your eyes, you seem to be very unconvinced. But it doesn't matter. The competition has just begun. I only used one move and just warmed up. I haven't gotten into the groove yet. Why don't we continue? Lin Yi looked at Meng Tong indifferently. Clearly, this guy was unconvinced. Again. Fuck. Warm up. Not in the groove. Seeing that everyone's eyes were focused on him, Meng Tong's expression suddenly changed again, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. Although Lin Yi did not kill him, he had suffered the 15th move of the Wild 8 trigram palm. It was already quite serious. Didn't you see that Meng Tong had already vomited blood all over the ground? At this time, he was struggling to get up because he was holding on to his last bit of face. If he were to receive another palm, he would be beaten to death on the spot. Seeing that Meng Tong had been scared off by Lin Yi's casual words, a few rookies by the side could not help but laugh. This Meng Tong was just flaunting his prowess and acting like he was invincible. But after suffering a palm strike, he was so scared. The contrast was huge. To think that he had said that Lin Yi was posturing. Now, it seemed that he was the one who said it. He was really boasting. Now, not only did he fail to posture, he became a retard. What are you laughing at? The arranged battle between fellow disciples is just a spar. Is it so funny? Are you laughing because you think you are good enough and want to go up and try? And Meng Tong, you idiot, how long do you want to embarrass me? Hurry up and leave. Meng Juiguang's face was very livid. If it weren't for the fact that so many pairs of eyes were watching, he would have personally beaten Meng Tong done up. Chapter 35-64. Feeling Meng Juiguang's murderous gaze behind him, Meng Tong's heart skipped a beat, but he refused to lose face. He hurriedly puffed out his chest and said, "Humph, you country bumpkin from the secular world, what are you so proud of? You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I didn't use my full strength just now because we are brothers, but I didn't expect you to use your full strength to deal with me. If it wasn't for my superior strength, I would have been killed by you if it was a peak late-stage heaven stage expert. I was soft-hearted for a moment and let you take advantage of me. Could it be that you really think you can beat me, a native perfection realm expert of Heaven Stage Island? What a villain." Meng Tong's words made the newcomers look at Lin Yi thoughtfully. These words saved some face for Meng Tong. From his arrogant performance just now, it was normal for him to be careless and not use his full strength. After all, it was unreasonable for a native Heaven Stage expert to be inferior to a mortal world expert at the same level. This was completely subverting common sense. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you were so easily crippled. Lin Yi nodded in realization and said, "I said it, defeating you is easy and pleasant. But since it was a moment of carelessness, then please go all out. Let's do it again, how about it? This is fair and just." After Lin Yi finished speaking, he looked at Meng Tong with a faint smile. This guy obviously didn't even have enough strength to speak, but he could still find a reason to excuse himself. He was really stubborn and wouldn't shed tears until he saw the coffin. Ah! Meng Tong's expression suddenly froze. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he could only continue saying, "Humph." You're quite mean, aren't you? I was seriously injured by your sneak attack just now, and you still want me to fight with you. You clearly want to kill me. How about this, wait for me. In the ranking competition a month later, I will let you know what a true heaven stage expert is. No, what is a foundation establishment expert? When the time comes, I will make you cry very rhythmically. A month later. Alright. I'll train hard and maybe I won't even need to ambush you when the time comes. Lin Yi said nonchalantly. Since Meng Tong was so stubborn, Lin Yi was too lazy to continue forcing him. Anyway, the purpose of establishing his prestige had been achieved. If he continued to be overbearing, he was afraid that the higher-ups of the welcoming pavilion would be disgusted. That would not be good. Immediately, he turned to look at Meng Jueguang and said, Senior Brother Meng, the rules you said just now should still be in effect, right? As for Meng Jueguang, he didn't care if he offended him or not. In any case, today's actions had completely offended him, and the two of them could no longer be reconciled. Humph, of course it counts. Meng Jueguang glanced at Meng Tong with a livid expression and did not deny it. After all, this was a rule he had set up in public. He couldn't just slap himself in the face and deny it. That's good. Thank you, Senior Brother Meng. Lin Yi smiled faintly. When everyone present thought that he couldn't wait to ask Meng Tong for cave number 1, he turned to look at Qiao Hongkai and said, Brother Qiao, I want to exchange my cave number 14 for your cave number 15. Is that okay? Ah. Qiao Hongkai was stunned and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He had already accepted his fate, but he didn't expect that Lin Yi would actually want to exchange caves with him. Although cave number 14 was ranked last among all caves, it was still much better than cave number 15, which was abandoned halfway in history. But it was much better than number 15, the worst cave residence in history, which had been abandoned midway. If number 15 could make everyone despair, then number 14 cave residence, as long as one worked hard, would be able to make everyone feel hopeless. But it was still much better than cave number 15, which was the worst cave in history. One made people feel hopeless, while the other gave them hope. Between the two, there was no difference. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. Is this really okay? After coming to his senses, Qiao Hongkai was overjoyed. He wasn't stupid. He had already guessed why Lin Yi wanted to do this. Although it was very likely to offend Meng Tong, and even Senior Brother Meng Jueguang who was behind him, he wasn't afraid of this. Because regardless of whether he was offended or not, it was impossible for him to be accepted by these people. Otherwise, they wouldn't have given him cave number 15 without hesitation. Now that Lin Yi showed kindness to him, being able to exchange from cave number 15 to cave number 14, this was simply like a pie falling from the sky. It was enough to change the future trajectory of his life. How could he not be ecstatic? Of course, Senior Brother Meng just said that we can exchange caves privately. Lin Yi glanced at the gloomy face of Meng Jueguang and said faintly. For Qiao Hongkai, this was something that could change the course of his life, but for Lin Yi, it was nothing more than a small matter. Although Qiao Hongkai was only acquainted with this person for the first time, from his previous performance, although this person's strength wasn't high, he was hot-blooded. This was rare in the indifferent cultivation world. Lin Yi had a good impression of him. He naturally wouldn't be stingy with this kind of small favor that he could help conveniently. Then I'll thank Brother Lin. Qiao Hongkai no longer looked at the faces of Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong. He immediately agreed happily and consciously walked behind Lin Yi. After experiencing today's incident, Meng Tong and others would inevitably hate him more in the future. If he wanted to continue to stay here, he could only team up with Lin Yi and others. Although Lin Yi came from the secular world, he gave him quite a good impression and was worth befriending. Lin Yi immediately looked at Meng Tong and said, "Then now cave number 15 is mine." "Meng Tong, according to the rules set by senior brother Meng, I want to use it to exchange for cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain. You won't go back on your words, right?" "What? You actually want me to live in the worst cave in history?" Meng Tong was wondering before that Lin Yi didn't exchange cave with him after winning, but went to exchange cave with Qiao Hongkai. What kind of thinking was this? Could it be that he didn't want his own cave because he was being pretentious? So he was quite happy until now when he realized Lin Yi's intention. It was as if he was struck by lightning on a clear day. It took him a long time to react. His resentful eyes scanned back and forth between Lin Yi and Qiao Hongkai. He couldn't wait to eat these two people alive. After all, even if he used cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain to exchange cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain, this already made him gnash his teeth. In the end, he didn't expect that Lin Yi would play even more ruthlessly. He actually wanted him to live in the worst cave number 15 in history. Chapter 3565. Ninth cousin, you have to help me. Meng Tong could only look at Meng Jueguang eagerly. At this time, the only one who could decide his fate was his ninth cousin. As long as Meng Jueguang said that it was invalid, then everything would not be a problem. Meng Jueguang glared at him hatefully. If it wasn't for this good-for-nothing, how could he fall into such an embarrassing situation? The words that were said before were like spilled water. With so many people watching, how could he take it back? At this time, if he really went back on his words, not only Meng Tong, but also Meng Jueguang would become the laughingstock of the entire Welcome Pavilion. He would not be able to lift his head in front of the stewards of the other two pavilions. Under the gaze of all the people present, Meng Jueguang had to grit his teeth and said, "This is the rule of Welcome Pavilion. Everyone has to abide by it, no exceptions. Even I have to abide by it." As soon as these words came out, Meng Tong suddenly looked as if he had lost his parents. But under the pressure of Meng Jueguang, he could only swallow his anger. But Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Senior brother Meng is wise." Meng Jueguang did not express his opinion, but this praise was as disgusting as eating a fly, and it was the kind of fly that had just flown out of a cesspool. But then, Lin Yi turned to Xiao Ran and said, "Xiao Ran, I will now exchange my number 1 cave residence for your number 13 cave residence. Is that okay?" "Exchange again." There was a sudden uproar. Previously, Lin Yi wanted to exchange number 14 cave residence for Qiao Hongcai's number 15 cave residence. It was understandable because he wanted to attack Meng Tong. But now this guy actually wanted to exchange his number 1 cave residence for Xiao Ran's number 13 cave residence. This was really incomprehensible. If it were others, they would be happy to get the number 1 cave residence. Why would he take the initiative to exchange his number 13 cave residence? He must be sick in the head. Was it purely because of his noble character and unquestionable integrity? The cultivation world had always been cruel. Since this Lin Yi was able to stand out in the secular world, he shouldn't be so childish. Could it be that he had other intentions? Ah, Brother Lin, this is too precious. Forgive me, I can't accept it. Xiao Ran was stunned for a moment, then quickly waved his hand and refused. Although he and Lin Yi had come from the secular world together, so their relationship was naturally closer than the other rookies present. It was only natural for them to take care of each other, but the problem was that the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain was too important. It was so important that even if he worked like a slave for Lin Yi in the future, he might not be able to repay this favor. Indeed, the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain was the dream abode of all the rookies present. He, Xiao Ran, was no exception. With his cultivation at the peak of the late stage of Heaven stage, if combined with the effects of the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, not to mention competing with the people from the Soaring Sky Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion, it was very likely that he would sit on the top seat of the rookies present in the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future. To anyone, this was an irresistible temptation. It was the same for Xiao Ran, and it should be the same for Lin Yi. Although Lin Yi previously said that his cultivation technique was special and did not have a high concentration of spiritual energy, everyone knew that this was just an excuse. However, anyone with a discerning eye would know that this was just an excuse. No matter how heaven-defying and eccentric a cultivation technique was, the more spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the better. There was no such thing as the denser the spiritual qi, the worse the effect of cultivation. Brother Xiao, just accept it. If it really doesn't work, you can use it for half a month and we can exchange it. Although Lin Yi said it with a smile, his words were filled with no room for doubt. He did not give Xiao Ran the slightest chance to refuse. It's settled, unless you want to break off relations with me in the future. Revenge must be taken, kindness must be repaid. This had always been Lin Yi's principle. Just based on Xiao Ran's good intention of asking him to go to cave house number 13 at the foot of the mountain to cultivate, he wanted to return the favor. Moreover, they came up together from the secular world, so they were naturally allies who could help each other in the future. It was not necessarily a bad thing for Lin Yi to let Xiao Ran's strength improve a little faster. Seeing that Lin Yi's attitude was so firm, it did not seem like he was joking, and it was actually serious to the point of breaking off relations. Xiao Ran hesitated for a moment and had no choice but to agree, then. All right, I can't thank you enough for your kindness. In the future, I am willing to follow Brother Lin's lead. Born in the Xiao family, an ancient family that had declined, Xiao Ran was used to the fickleness of human nature since he was young. He had seen a lot of mutual deception, but it was the first time he met an extraordinary person like Lin Yi. Although his strength was only at heaven stage great perfection, his intuition, honed by years of adversity, told him that the Lin Yi in front of him would definitely not be an ordinary person in the future. It didn't matter if it was gratitude or a long-term investment, Xiao Ran knew that from this day onwards, he had been labeled as Lin Yi's follower in front of everyone. From now on in the welcoming pavilion, he would advance and retreat together with Lin Yi. They would rise and fall together, and they would fall together. And at this time, all the rookies looked at Lin Yi differently. Just now, their eyes were filled with awe, but now, besides awe, there was an additional hint of mockery. It seemed that what Meng Tong said before was right. This guy named Lin Yi was really good at posturing. Just now, he was just lucky to win a round against Meng Tong, but in the blink of an eye, he immediately became arrogant. He really did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Without the help of cave abode number 1, his strength would definitely not increase as fast as others after a month. When the time came, he would fall into a trap of his own making and lose the ranking competition. That would be fun to watch. He was just a country bumpkin who was lucky to make it in the secular world. What was there to be arrogant about? He was really a villain intoxicated by success. Even if he wanted to form a faction, there was no need to do this, right? If he lost a month later, did he really think that Xiao Ran would still think highly of him? Following a weakling, wasn't that the behavior of a retard? Lin Yi did not seem to notice the change in the expressions of the people beside him. He looked at Xiao Hongkai, who was standing beside him, and decided to be a good person and said, "Brother Xiao, why don't I exchange cave abode number 13 with you? I will still stay in my cave abode number 14. I will respect senior brother Meng's arrangements. After all, this cave abode was allocated to me by senior brother Meng." "Ah. Okay. Xiao Hongkai was already a little numb at this time. Since he was young, it was the first time he had seen such a maverick guy like Lin Yi. Compared to the shocking action of exchanging cave abode number 1, this kind of thing was simply not worth mentioning. He cupped his hands towards Lin Yi. "Brother Lin, thank you very much. If you need anything in the future, just tell me." Although Xiao Hongkai did not say that he would blindly follow Lin Yi's lead like Xiao Ran did, but he also called Lin Yi as Brother Lin and also said that he had something to tell him. The implied meaning was very obvious. Chapter 3566. Lin Yi even began to rearrange the cave abodes in front of everyone. This was a complete provocation to him, the steward's senior apprentice brother, who had sole authority. One had to know that even the senior brother who was also a steward didn't dare to criticize these things under his pressure. Unfortunately, he had already announced that they were allowed to exchange cave abodes privately. This was also the rule of the Welcome Pavilion. Meng Juiguang couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. He could only give himself 2 slaps. If he didn't say this rule just now, how could this newcomer, Lin Yi, take advantage of such a big loophole? What are you still gathering here for? All of you disperse and scram back to your cave abodes. The 2 in the secular world, go ask for the mantra of the cultivation method from the steward. Meng Juiguang was angry looking at this group of newcomers, especially Lin Yi. If there wasn't the sect rule that inner sect disciples couldn't attack outer sect disciples, he would probably attack Lin Yi right now. He was just a country bumpkin from the secular world. Who was he? Unfortunately, inner sect disciples couldn't even challenge outer sect disciples, unless outer sect disciples had already advanced to the foundation establishment stage. He could only take revenge in other ways in the future. Since the steward's senior apprentice brother had spoken, the group of newcomers looked at each other and dispersed. They couldn't wait to experience their own cave abodes. Seeing that almost everyone had left, Meng Tong hurriedly ran to Meng Juiguang and complained, "Ninth cousin, you have to help me. Don't tell me you really want me to live in the 15th cave abode at the foot of the mountain. If that's the case, how am I going to beat that hateful Lin Yi a month later? Who can you blame for not living up to expectations? You can't even beat a trash from the secular world. You've really lost all your face." Meng Juiguang scolded angrily. He originally had high hopes for Meng Tong and was prepared to train him to be his right-hand man. Now, he didn't do anything. Instead, he had brought trouble upon himself. Meng Tong's face suddenly turned red, and he hurriedly explained, "Ninth cousin brother, don't you know my strength? Just now, I was really careless and let Lin Yi take advantage of the loophole. I originally wanted to give him some face, but I didn't expect that he would attack me from the beginning." Meng Juiguang said thoughtfully, "That's true. That kid really is sinister. If you really fought fair and square, there's no reason for you, a local great perfection deity, to lose to a commoner like him. That's why. In next month's qualifying competition, I will definitely beat him to a pulp. However, if ninth cousin brother really wants me to live in the 15th Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain, then it will be hard to say." Meng Tong hurriedly said. What he was most afraid of was that Meng Juiguang would no longer care about him. If he lost such a big backer for no reason, he would really have no place to cry. How can I go back on my words in public? Kid, listen to me, whether you want to live or not, you have to live in the 15th Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain for me. Meng Juiguang glanced at him sternly. Meng Tong was so frightened that he shivered. After a pause, Meng Juiguang slowed down his tone and said, "But you don't have to worry. Although you live in the worst 15th Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain, that Lin Yi himself pretended to live in the 14th Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain. It's not much better than yours. I will think of a way to give you more spiritual jades. At that time, it will be enough for you to shake him off. You can use the worst immortal's cave to step on him instead. Wouldn't it be more satisfying to take revenge this way? This also indirectly proves that you are stronger than Lin Yi. Otherwise, if your strength is not stronger than him at the beginning, how can you defeat him in a situation where the cultivation environment is worse than his? That's right. Ninth cousin is really brilliant. Meng Tong's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement. For newcomers, the most important cultivation resources were mainly two things. One was the Immortal's Cave, and the other was spiritual jades. Comparing the two, the effect of spiritual jades was far above the Immortal's Cave. Especially compared to the inferior Immortal's Cave at the foot of the mountain, the effect was hundreds or even thousands of times better. Otherwise, spiritual jades would not be the first choice for most people to help them break through to the Foundation establishment realm. But even so, spiritual jades had two disadvantages compared to Immortal's Cave. One was that they were rare and precious, and difficult to obtain, especially for newcomers. The second was that they were one-time consumables. If they absorbed it with all their strength, it would take 2 to 3 days at the fastest, 4 to 5 days at the slowest, and the spiritual chi inside would be completely consumed. They were not like Immortal's Cave that could be used for a long time. According to the rules, the Welcome Pavilion would give a piece of spiritual jades to newcomers every month. Although this process seemed very fair, it should be known that there were always big and small spiritual jades. The ones responsible for the distribution of spiritual jades were the senior brothers like Meng Juiguang. When the time came, the Blue Cloud Pavilion would be decided by Meng Juiguang's word. As for the nominal senior brother in charge, Ku Bai, he was completely ignored by them. Leaving aside Meng Juiguang and Meng Tong's schemes, Lin Yi informed senior brother Bitter Corner, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Hongkai, and then entered his Immortal's Cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain. He didn't use any mental cultivation method, so he didn't know whether Xiao Ran needed it or not. If he did, senior brother Bitter Corner wouldn't make things difficult for him. After looking around, Lin Yi found that the spiritual chi inside the Immortal's Cave was coming from the ground. The concentration of spiritual chi was about 8 to 10 times that of the outside. If it was in the secular world, it would be enough to be called a cultivation holy land. Unfortunately, Lin Yi had long been used to the ultra-high concentration of spiritual chi in the space of the jade pendant, so he didn't care about it at all. According to this speculation, not to mention the Immortal's Cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain, even the best Immortal's Cave number 1 at the top of the mountain was still far from as abnormal as the space of the jade pendant. This was also the reason why Lin Yi just gave the Immortal's Cave to Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai. Sitting in such a treasure mountain like the space of the jade pendant, if Lin Yi still didn't have enough confidence, then he was really sick. After closing the Immortal's Cave, Lin Yi sat cross-legged and entered the space of the jade pendant. Above every cultivation Immortal's Cave, there was a forbidden spell. After a newcomer entered the Immortal's Cave, the forbidden spell would be activated, and outsiders couldn't enter without permission. This was also to prevent people from being dishonest and secretly taking advantage of others' Immortal's Cave when others were not around. After all, the output of spiritual chi in each Immortal's Cave was limited in a certain period of time. When changing the Immortal's Cave, it was necessary to ask a master in the Foundation establishment stage to help remove the forbidden spell, and then reactivate the forbidden spell. This was the first time that Lin Yi entered the space of the jade pendant since he was transported to the heavenly stage island, and the scene in front of him shocked him. Jiao Lao. Looking at the strange state of Jiao Yazi, Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little stunned. At this moment, Jiao Yazi was standing on the ground as usual, but for some unknown reason, his whole body had become a transparent shadow, motionless. Chapter 3567. Jiao Lao. Hello. Jiao Lao. However, no matter how Lin Yi shouted, he didn't respond. In the past, when Lin Yi called Jiao Yazi, he would be angry, but now, he really didn't respond. Kid, don't shout. This old thing has been like this since just now. Beside Lin Yi, the ghostly thing's voice suddenly came, which shocked Lin Yi. Ah. Senior Ghost, you're awake. What do you mean since just now? Lin Yi didn't expect the ghostly thing to wake up, so he asked with some doubts. When you were teleported to Heavenly Island from the secular world, this old thing was like this. The ghostly thing said faintly. It can't be. How can I affect Jiao Lao when I'm on Heavenly Island? It seems that, what he said before was true. Lin Yi sighed, but he was somewhat puzzled. But Senior Ghost, why are you fine? What do you mean I'm fine? Do you want something to happen to me? The ghostly thing suddenly said angrily, how can I be the same as him? I originally came from Heavenly Island. Who knows how he came here? It was a slip of the tongue. Lin Yi laughed dryly to appease the ghostly thing's anger. Then, he said with some surprise, so, you came from Heavenly Island? Of course. The ghostly thing said faintly, now, I don't mind talking to you more. I'm quite satisfied with your strength for now. Do me a favor in the future. Consider it as a repayment for helping you so many times. Okay, as long as I can do it. Lin Yi didn't refuse. After all, the ghostly thing had helped him a lot. Even the puppet avatar was left in the secular world's villa by Lin Yi to protect Lin Yi's friends and family. Didn't that old thing say before that he wanted to impart some memories to you? You didn't receive it. However, my guess is that this Jiao Yazi was like a puppet clone before. Although it could move, it was controlled by the main body behind it. I suspect that the main body lost contact with him after you got to Sky Class Island. In other words, he couldn't receive the signals from the main body, so that's how it ended up. The thing said, I can still connect with the puppet, but I can't connect with the other body parts, but I can't connect with them. However, this kind of connection was already very difficult. It could only be maintained when one's family was in danger, and the puppet avatar could automatically fight against the enemy. But what did it see now? I can't feel where it is anymore. So, if the mother behind Jiao Yazi isn't as powerful as me, or if she didn't expect him to come to Heaven Stage Island, it's reasonable that we lost contact. So that's how it is. Lin Yi was a little disappointed after hearing it. However, he also knew that if what the ghost said was true, he would not be able to survive. Then, Lin Yi didn't have to think about recovering Jiao Yazi for the time being. However, what made Lin Yi a little puzzled was that he didn't seem to receive any information. Could it be that he could only unlock the memory when his strength reached a certain level? Thinking that Jiao Lao wouldn't lie to him, then he would wait and see. In addition to Jiao Lao, there was also the Skybolt pig lying in the space of the jade pendant. This was brought here by Lin Yi considering the Skybolt pig's treasure hunting characteristics. However, it was now unconscious. Fortunately, there was no threat to its life. It seemed that it only needed to rest in the space of the jade pendant for a while. It should be able to recover in the future. It seemed that even if the spirit beast was in the space of the jade pendant, it was still somewhat affected. This teleportation array should be specially designed for human cultivators, with the mentality of taking things as they come. Lin Yi decided to stabilize his heavenly Dao level first, which was the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Having just broken through to the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, Lin Yi's foundation wasn't very stable yet. He had to stabilize it as soon as possible. 2 hours later, Lin Yi suddenly opened his eyes because he felt that his cave dwelling's forbidden spell seemed to have vibrated just now. However, it wasn't the kind of violent destruction. It was more like some kind of transmission, as if someone in the secular world had pressed the doorbell. Getting up and removing the forbidden spell, Lin Yi walked out of his cave dwelling. He noticed that the other newcomers were also walking out of their respective caves with a puzzled look on their faces. The situation seemed to be the same as him, they had received a transmission. Seeing that Lin Yi came out, Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongkai consciously leaned towards him. After the previous matter of changing the cave dwelling, the three of them had already become a small group, and the backbone was naturally Lin Yi. At the same time, senior brother Ku Bai, who was standing not far away, also walked towards the three of them. "Greetings, senior brother Ku." Lin Yi and the other two greeted him. Not only Lin Yi and Xiao Ran, even Xiao Hongkai didn't dare to be disrespectful. Of course, this was all because of Lin Yi. Otherwise, even if he didn't directly ignore this extremely weak senior brother steward like the others, he wouldn't have greeted him so attentively. "Greetings, junior brothers." Seeing the three of them greet him together, senior apprentice brother Bitter was a little excited. Ever since he took the position of senior apprentice brother, he had never enjoyed this kind of treatment. Although if this were to happen to other senior apprentice brothers, even if there were many newcomers who took the initiative to greet him, it would be a matter of course. However, he was different. From the first day he took the position, he was directly made a figurehead by the powerful senior brother, Meng Juiguang. He was completely an invisible person on the periphery. All the dirty and tiring work was done by him, but he didn't have any power in his hands. His character was weak, and he had no binding force or deterrence to the newcomers. If anyone dared to get close to him, they would even be made trouble by Meng Juiguang. If he still wanted people to be respectful to him, then he would really be seeing a ghost. However, now that there were new junior brothers like Lin Yi under him, senior apprentice brother Ku Bai regained some of his dignity as a senior apprentice brother steward. He couldn't help but feel tears welling up in his eyes. He secretly swore in his heart that even if it was for these junior brothers, he couldn't be as weak as before. At least, he couldn't let them be bullied too badly by Meng Juiguang in the future. "Senior brother Ku, was it you who triggered our cave abode's forbidden spell just now?" Lin Yi asked. Senior apprentice brother Ku Bai nodded. "That's right. It was senior brother Meng's order. He went to greet a few distinguished guests and asked me to call all of you out to wait." Greet a few distinguished guests. To call everyone out in such a big scene, could it be that some big shot had come from above? Chapter 3568. What are they doing here? Could it be that Kong Mingming instigated this envoy to find trouble with me? Lin Yi's heart was slightly moved. With Kong Mingming's vengeful personality, if he hugged a thick thigh, it would be natural for him to seek revenge. Previously, in the secular world, although they had signed a peace treaty, but now that everyone had joined the welcoming pavilion, presumably, the other people would no longer care about the treaty. Lin Yi remained calm as he watched the few people slowly walk over. He could only react accordingly. Although the envoy from Soaring Sky Pavilion was very strong, he was also an early-stage Foundation establishment expert. Even if they really fought, he might not be at a disadvantage. If he couldn't win, couldn't he run? Moreover, the welcoming pavilion had its own rules. It should not allow these people to casually make a move on the new disciples. "Young Master Su, please wait a moment. Let me introduce you to these new disciples, in case they don't recognize Mount Tai and offend you." Meng Juiguang nodded and bowed to Su Lingchong with a flattering expression. Although the other party was the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, strictly speaking, there was no intersection between him and the manager of Blue Cloud Pavilion. However, if he neglected him because of this, then he really could not be any more stupid. Don't forget that Welcoming Pavilion's Pavilion Master Hu Yunfeng's backer is the Soaring Sky Pavilion's elder. This young Master Su could casually say a few words and Meng Jueguang would be annihilated in a matter of minutes. Su Lingchong nodded slightly. Only then did Meng Jueguang turn to the group of new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. He immediately changed his dignified expression and said in a clear voice, "All of you listen up. This is young Master Su Lingchong. He is the grandson of Soaring Sky Pavilion's third elder and also the inner disciple manager of Soaring Sky Pavilion. I don't need to say how honorable his status is. Why don't you quickly greet Senior Brother Su?" "Greetings, Senior Brother Su." The group of new disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion hurriedly greeted him in unison. "Forget it." Su Lingchong waved his hand impatiently. Towards these Clear Cloud Pavilion's lowest rung of the ladder, he didn't care. He had no interest in meeting him at all. He turned to Meng Jueguang and ordered, "Hurry up and get down to business. Don't waste my time." All right. Meng Jueguang hurriedly replied and turned to look at the crowd. "Young Master Su is here for the new deacon, although it has nothing to do with you. But each of you has one vote in your hands, so I still have to explain it to you. Everyone knows that in our Welcome Pavilion, in addition to the 3 pavilion masters, there are also 2 steward senior brothers who are responsible for everyone's daily training, resource allocation, task allocation, and so on. The affairs are complicated. And in order to better manage you new disciples, in order to improve the relationship between you new disciples, the Welcoming Pavilion has specially created a new deacon position in addition to the 6 steward senior brothers. His responsibility is to distribute low-level tasks to the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, such as cleaning, kitchen cooking, and so on. And this new deacon will be voted for by all the new disciples. Only those who get more than 2/3 of the votes can be elected. Everyone understands, right? The group of new disciples suddenly understood. Those who were slightly smarter quickly figured out the trick. This new deacon position, although nominally only responsible for distributing some low-level tasks, didn't involve any cultivation resources, and didn't seem to have any profits to speak of, but this was all just on the surface. In reality, for any new disciple, this position was extremely important. There were 3 reasons. First, as the only new deacon in the Welcome Pavilion, he would naturally be the role model for all the new disciples. Even if it was for the sake of the entire Welcome Pavilion's face, they would inevitably tilt some cultivation resources towards him. Otherwise, as the role model of the new disciples, if he couldn't even pass the foundation establishment stage, wouldn't that make everyone laugh their heads off? Second, although the new deacon was only responsible for distributing some low-level tasks. But as long as he did it well, he could completely establish a wide network of contacts among the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, which would greatly benefit his future development. For example, no one was willing to do the task of cleaning the latrines. I assigned it to others, but not to you. Then shouldn't you think of me as a good person? Third, since the new deacon was a position in the Welcome Pavilion, he would definitely have a position and treatment. Even if it wasn't as good as the steward senior brothers, there would still be some subsidies. Compared to the other new disciples, he would naturally have a head start. After thinking through these 3 points, the thoughts of the new disciples in the Blue Cloud Pavilion suddenly became active. Since the position of the new deacon was voted for, then wouldn't they also have a chance? If they sat in the position of the new deacon, wouldn't they also have a meteoric rise in the future? However, after seeing the aggressive gazes of Su Lingchong and the others, everyone's faces immediately stiffened. They immediately reacted. For the new disciples of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, this was simply an unrealistic fantasy. Among all the new disciples of the 3 pavilions, one had to get more than 2/3 of the votes in order to be elected. What kind of concept was this? This meant that not only would they have to completely conquer all the new disciples in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, they would also have to conquer at least half of the new disciples in the Soaring Pavilion and the Mysterious Pavilion. Was this even possible? Not to mention the second-generation cultivators in the Soaring Pavilion, even the old men in the Mysterious Pavilion wouldn't care about you. You want them to vote for the useless new disciples of the Blue Cloud Pavilion? Dream on. According to past experience, the new deacon position is usually taken by the new disciples of the Soaring Pavilion. Occasionally, it would be snatched away by the Mysterious Pavilion, but as for our Blue Cloud Pavilion, this has never happened before, the bitter senior brother explained to Lin Yi and the others in a low voice. Lin Yi nodded. This was all to be expected. Apart from themselves, the second-generation cultivators in the Soaring Pavilion would not care about the new disciples of the other 2 pavilions at all. The old men in the Mysterious Pavilion, on the other hand, had a bit of a competitive edge because they were stronger. As for the Blue Cloud Pavilion, they could only be bystanders in this kind of situation. For them, the only difference was whether they would be conquered by the Soaring Pavilion or the Mysterious Pavilion. That was all. It seems that everyone has already understood. That's good. Meng Juiguang was already used to this kind of thing, and he would not have any unrealistic ambitions to fight for the new disciples of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. He immediately turned around and invited Kong Ming Ming, who was beside him, and said, "This is junior brother Kong Ming Ming of the Soaring Pavilion. He is also a candidate that young Master Su has strongly supported. When the voting begins tomorrow morning, everyone should know what to do, right?" Chapter 3569. On the other hand, the other newcomers were silent. They looked at Meng Juiguang with a strange gaze. Even if the newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion didn't have the ability to compete for the position of newcomer deacon, but as the senior brother steward of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he was so attentively canvassing for votes for outsiders. Wasn't this a little too disappointing for his own people? Fellow disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, I'll leave tomorrow's voting in your hands. If I, Kong Ming Ming, take the position of newcomer deacon, I won't mistreat you in the future. Kong Ming Ming took the opportunity to make a solemn vow to the crowd. Of course, what he said was purely a lie. If he really became the new deacon, all the dirty and tiring work would eventually fall onto the Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples. Could it be that he would let the Soaring Sky Pavilion's second-generation disciples do the menial chores? Not to mention the Soaring Sky Pavilion's second-generation cultivators, even those powerful old fogies from the Profound Secrets Pavilion were not people Huang Xiaolong was willing to offend. The easiest targets to bully were the new trash disciples from the Clear Cloud Pavilion. Rest assured, junior brother Kong. The newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion don't have many good points, but they are absolutely obedient. Just wait to become a newcomer deacon. When the time comes, don't forget about me. Meng Juiguang said with a smile. Although Kong Ming was a newcomer from the secular world like Lin Yi, he had the backing of Su Lingchong, the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion's inner sect. In Meng Juiguang's eyes, Kong Ming's weight was naturally different. He was worth fawning over. Then I'll have to trouble senior brother Meng to help me keep an eye on it. This opportunity is very important to me. I can't afford to fail, Kong Ming Ming said worriedly. This was related to his personal future, so he had to be careful. Junior brother Kong, you can rest assured. This is an open secret ballot. If anyone dares to disobey, I'll teach them a lesson, Meng Juiguang said without concealment. Hearing this, the newcomers' expressions changed. The threat was a little too direct. However, the rookies finally understood. Since they had no hope of being elected, it did not matter who they voted for. There was no need to offend Meng Juiguang, the eldest senior brother in charge, over such a trivial matter. Seeing that everyone nodded obediently, Meng Juiguang could not help but point his chin at Kong Mingming proudly. However, when he saw Lin Yi and the other two, his expression changed. Because Lin Yi and the other two didn't have any intention of going along with him. They just stood there with their arms crossed. He looked on coldly from the sidelines. The others were afraid of Meng Juiguang because they were afraid that he would make things difficult for them in the future. However, Lin Yi and the other two were already on bad terms with him. Even if they obeyed him now, there would be no benefit. It was better to act tough. After all, to Lin Yi, even if he did not want to offend Meng Juiguang, he had already offended them. And this time, if Kong Mingming was elected as a new deacon, there would be some trouble in the future. At least, the dirtiest and most tiring work would definitely be spread to him. So this time, he definitely could not let him have his way. In fact, even if Su Lingchong helped him settle the Soaring Pavilion's votes, he might not be able to settle the old men in the mysterious pavilion. And according to the rules, the votes had to exceed 2/3. As long as the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Lin Yi and the other two did not agree, even if the others voted for him, there was a high possibility that he would not be elected in the end. Just now, he had already patted his chest and said something big, but in the end, he immediately saw someone not cooperating. Meng Juiguang's old face suddenly became a little hot. If it was someone else, he would have scolded them long ago. However, facing a troublesome newbie like Lin Yi. However, there was nothing he could do. He clearly didn't want to listen to you. Even if you made things difficult for him in the future, he wasn't afraid of you. What else could you do? Senior brother Meng, can't you handle them? Kong Mingming quickly realized that something was wrong. After all, Lin Yi and company's unwavering stance was the complete opposite of the other rookie's submissive performance. Furthermore, Lin Yi was a thorn in his side that he paid special attention to. It was hard for him not to notice it. There are always some arrogant newbies who don't want to be disciplined. There's still a long way to go. I, your brother, will let them know how powerful I am. Meng Juiguang could only say with a shy face. There's still a long way to go. Kong Mingming couldn't help but roll his eyes. For Meng Juiguang, of course, there was still a long way to go. However, he couldn't wait. The voting would be held tomorrow morning. If he couldn't win over the Blue Cloud Pavilion side, the votes might not reach 2/3. Then, all his efforts would be in vain. No, he had to quickly nip the risk in the bud. As for seeking revenge on Lin Yi, as long as he became the new deacon, there would be plenty of opportunities in the future. Kong Mingming had no choice but to explain the situation to Su Lingchong. Su Lingchong nodded and signaled him to personally settle it. After all, Kong Mingming was someone he publicly supported. Before coming here, he had already built up enough momentum. If he couldn't get the new deacon tomorrow, then if word got out, even he, Master Su, would lose face along with him. Kong Mingming was instantly overjoyed. He quickly followed behind Su Lingchong and walked towards Lin Yi. He thought to himself, now that Master Su is personally taking action, let's see if Lin Yi can still be so stubborn. Zhong Pingliang, who was also following behind, was a little worried. Although on the surface, he had defected to Su Lingchong's side, he was actually Lin Yi's spy. After interacting with Su Lingchong for a few hours, he already knew that Su Lingchong not only had a strong background, but his own strength was also extremely high. If Boss Lin were to rashly talk back to him, it was very likely that he would suffer a huge loss. You're Lin Yi. I heard that you're very prestigious in the secular world. Su Lingchong led his men and stopped in front of Lin Yi, his face full of mockery as he spoke condescendingly. This instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Seeing that the main character was actually this secular world's Lin Yi, they couldn't help but reveal expressions of watching a good show. Sure enough, acting tough was met with lightning. This Lin Yi seemed to be in big trouble. Su Lingchong actually disdained to stand up for Kong Mingming before. With his status in the North Island of Heaven Island, he was of famous existence in the three pavilions. It seemed a little unreasonable for him to teach an outer sect disciple who had just entered Heaven Island a lesson. If people knew about it, it would seem like he was bullying the weak. However, Su Lingchong was really angry today. Previously, he brought Kong Mingming to the mysterious pavilion. Although the two old stewards of the mysterious pavilion gave him face and helped Kong Mingming advertise a little, it could be seen that they weren't very enthusiastic. Only a few people responded, and it was unknown whether they were sincere or not. This made him feel a little embarrassed, but after all, the mysterious pavilion's strength was only slightly inferior to the soaring pavilion. He, Su Lingchong, didn't have the strength to act tough with these old men. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.